I opened a restaurant in Konoha and revived Hatake Sakumo at the start. Chapter 51 Cooperation. Hearing what Orochimaru said, Uchiha Kyoshi secretly felt something was wrong. If Orochimaru tried to summon souls by reincarnating from the dirty soil, he would definitely find that the souls of Senju Hashirama are not currently in the pure land of the underworld. Orochimaru continued. Uchiha Madara's real body has not been found yet. So I tried to summon Senju Hashirama. Our great first-generation Hokage, the man known as the Ninja God. Even under normal summons, you can't suppress him, but you have to try. Uzumaki Mito watched from a distance. The temperature in his heart has gradually turned cold. Orochimaru can say these words without hesitation, so there is no need to doubt it anymore. Orochimaru walked slower and slower. Uchiha Kyoshi looked around, only remembering that he followed him and turned many corners, and it was difficult to discern the exact direction in the dark. He didn't remember that Konoha had such a complicated route, probably some kind of terrain enchantment. Maybe it was just Orochimaru taking him around in circles, confusing his sight. Uchiha Kyoshi followed Orochimaru and stopped. Orochimaru turned around, faced Uchiha Kyoshi and continued. Although I was full of enthusiasm, I was very disappointed with the initial results. I found that I was completely unable to connect with the soul of Senshuju. However, after many checks, I found that this is not my problem, but... Orochimaru stared at Uchiha Kyoshi and stopped on purpose. The meaning is obvious. If the soul is not in the pure land of the underworld, it is in the present world. From the performance point of view, the one who can have an obvious connection with Senjuju recently is Uchiha Kyoshi. Uchiha said calmly. Do you mean that it has something to do with me? Orochimaru flashed his trademark sneer. That's right, the fairy mode in Kyansho Zujian is unique, and if you master it, it will explain the problem. Uchiha Kyoshi suddenly felt that the development of the matter deviated from his expectations. Orochimaru found out about Senjujuma's resurrection, so will others be informed by Orochimaru? For example, Danzo. Still have to try again. Uchiha Kyoshi shook his head and said nonchalantly. You also said that the reincarnation of the dirty soil is a forbidden technique. Could it be that you are useless? Moreover, as long as you master the method of absorbing natural energy, you can learn the fairy technique. Have you seen many fairy modes? Why do you say mine? It comes from the Thousand Hands column room. Orochimaru slowly leaned against the wall, pretending to be thinking. What you said is not unreasonable, but... Orochimaru's pair of snake pupils stared at Kyoshi Uchiha closely, as if asking questions. Where do those talented people in your restaurant come from? I have lived in Konoha for decades, and I know a lot of neighbors in the streets and alleys. But I don't have any impression of them appearing out of nowhere. Quote. Uchiha Kyoshi's forehead dripped with cold sweat, but he still kept his tone steady. It's just your impression. You don't seem like a person who cares about civilians. Do you care how many slices of bread you eat? Orochimaru snorted twice. Forget it, I just misremembered it. Then you dare to go to Konoha's archives with me to find their corresponding information. Find out what their surnames are, what are their names, and where do they come from. There is no need to talk about this. If you have to talk to death, you will have nowhere to go. Kyoshi Uchiha took a deep breath, and the texture of the sage pattern appeared on his face. In that case, the instant burst of chakra momentum made Orochimaru feel a sense of oppression. Although this level of chakra still feels worth fighting. But he didn't know how many cards Uchiha Kyoshi had. Uchiha Kyoshi pressed his hand against the wall, and black magic runes gushed out from his palm frantically. Attached to the wall, landed at the feet, and even floated in the air, surrounding Orochimaru. This is the enchantment seal soul refining array provided by Uzumaki Mito to Uchiha Kyoshi. Use the power of the technique to surround the target in all directions. The technique and chakra are combined to form a solid barrier. If you can't forcibly break through the chakra barrier formed by relying on the technique, then using any ninjutsu or means cannot break away from this enchantment. Then I have to let you keep the secret. Uchiha said coldly, a short blade formed by condensed water escape chakra appeared in his hand. At this time, Uzumaki Mito and Senshuju alternately helped him. Orochimaru looked at the ancient spells beside him, which clearly came from the Uzumaki clan, and felt both excited and nervous. What is exciting is that Uchiha Kyoshi has more resources than he imagined. He even mastered the sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan. Such a terrifying thing is rarely seen now. The nervous thing is that Uchiha Kyoshi's specialness exceeded his expectations, and even threatened his life. Now he is walking on eggshells and must be dealt with. These complicated and incomprehensible spells are not something he can figure out in a short time, and he can only start with the caster. The barrier bound Uchiha Kyoshi and Orochimaru to a small area. Orochimaru thought of a variety of methods, many of which could temporarily avoid Uchiha Kyoshi's melee attack, but they could not let him escape from the barrier. Orochimaru spoke hastily, wanting to discuss with Uchiha Kyoshi. We can. Uchiha Kyoshi didn't wait for him to finish speaking, he raised the water blade and stabbed at Orochimaru. Hidden Shadow Snake Hand. Orochimaru raised his hand to block in front of him, and a large number of snakes appeared on the cuffs. The high-strength compressed water blade chopped off these strangely screaming snakes one after another. Orochimaru is not afraid of these innocuous physical attacks, but is afraid of being approached by Uchiha and being cast with some difficult-to-remove sealing techniques, which will make him suffer for a long time. You can only try your best to maneuver in this small space. Maybe we can work together so I don't give out your information. Orochimaru took advantage of the gap between the fights and quickly said a word. Water escape. Water breaks waves. Uchiha Kyoshi ignored it, and responded with a water escape. The water blade dropped his hand, and threw it at Orochimaru, and at the same time violently sprayed a straight line of ultra-high-pressure water jets from his mouth. Orochimaru had no choice but to let the water column cut his body open, and then use the method of shedding the skin to abandon the damaged old body and use the new body to stand up. I didn't fight back, so it should be able to show my sincerity, and it's not like I don't have any whole cards. Orochimaru said while panting. The disadvantage of the molting secret technique is that the new body will fall into a period of weakness. Kyoshi Uchiha put away the water blade, walked over slowly, and put his hand on Orochimaru's shoulder. Orochimaru held a gambling attitude and did not resist. From Uchiha Kyoshi's hands, the art gradually climbed onto Orochimaru's body. As long as he has a certain will, he can let a large number of art lock the body of Orochimaru. Only when the security on his own side is ensured, can Uchiha Kyoshi be interested in listening to the other party talk about him. You better be able to say something that interests me. After realizing the turning point of the matter, the more nervous Dashuan became, the more inexplicably excited he felt. He felt he had made the right bet. It depends on what you want. Chapter 52 The Real Greedy One. I want to do scientific research with you, realize controlled nuclear fission in Konoha, and make nuclear bombs. Conquer cancer and greatly increase the life expectancy of all human beings. Apart from Orochimaru's technological power, Uchiha Kyoshi couldn't think of what he wanted for a while. Wholesale fresh snake meat. That's an idea. Snake meat is firm, and it is a very good meat material. The price of a pot of snake meat can also be set very high. You can't have the fetters of Orochimaru. Uchiha Kyoshi tilted his head slightly, raised his eyebrows and said, Sorry, I don't want anything. With a slight force on the hand, the black abyss-like technique began to spread on Dashimaru's shoulder. Orochimaru didn't bother to see how far those spells had spread on him. If he really wanted to fight, he would directly summon Rashomon on the ground, or use the formation of 10,000 snakes to summon a large wave of snakes to sweep the surroundings, instead of such small fights. Since you are willing to go so far with me, it means that you also have a plan. Although I can feel your killing intent, I still think you are scaring me. Subtle and frequent rubbing sounds came from Uchiha Kyoshi's ears, and the hissing sound of the snake spitting out letters came from all directions. A large number of snakes of different thickness poked their heads out of the shadows, showing their sharp and frightening teeth. The venom is secreted from the teeth, and if you look closely, it is hanging brightly on the pointed tip, reflecting a dim light. Orochimaru also hides a lot of things. Although your enchantment formula is indeed complex and strong enough, even I, who is well versed in this method, have no idea. However, I have another solution. The snakes I specially raised, their venom it can dissolve chakra, including your barrier. As long as the number is large enough and the delay is long enough, breaking the situation is not difficult. Uchiha clearly understands that Orochimaru is indeed difficult to kill completely. As long as it is not destroyed at the soul level, Orochimaru can always reshape and resurrect the body through various forms, and continue to live freely in the world. This man's attack power may not be that outstanding, but his ability to survive is indeed outstanding. The snakes around Uchiha Kyoshi are getting closer and closer, and many snake bodies are swaying, which makes people uncomfortable. It turned out that when Orochimaru led him around in circles, he had secretly arranged a snake formation. Uchiha said in a low voice, "So you still want to fight?" Orochimaru chuckled and shook his head. "Pure fighting is meaningless. If it can't bring about resource replacement, I will avoid ineffective fighting. I just want you to calm down. Also remind you, although you may not be interested in my strength, but I know a lot of information about Konoha. There should be something you are interested in." After Orochimaru's words, Uchiha Kyoshi's thoughts returned to the starting point. Back to the experiment of cooperation between Orochimaru and Danzo. To be honest, using the incident of stealing the corpses of the Uchiha tribe to target Danzo does not pose much threat to Danzo. The Konoha executives are not on Uchiha's side. At most, it is to be considerate of Uchiha's contribution in Konoha, and because of sympathy and had to give an explanation to the common people, let Danzo stop, and give some less painful punishment. They are too familiar with the sayings of, serving crimes and making meritorious service, and, seeing the consequences. As long as the root organization is under the control of Danzong, Danzong's power and influence will always be stable. But using Konoha's ninjas or ordinary people to do human experiments touched the bottom line of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Neither Hokage's identity nor his own character allowed him to ignore the innocent sacrifices of civilians. Not to mention the huge cost of cultivating a ninja and the need to invest a considerable amount of various resources, what a loss it is to lose it because of experiments. It is absolutely unacceptable for the public to do such a thing that is contrary to basic morals and ethics in the capacity of a high-level official. As long as the experiment continues, every citizen will worry whether they or their relatives and children will become tragic victims. When the time comes when he exposes the matter, the whole Konoha will be aroused, and the pressure of public opinion will come to Sarutobi Hiruzen. Uchiha Kyoshi didn't expect that Hiruzuru Sarutobi's soft-hearted character would be the killer. As long as he comes, kill a damn person, in most people's hearts, and Konoha's senior management has nothing to say. Maybe I am dissatisfied for a while, but I can only hold it in my heart. After all, when he killed Danzo, he also helped Konoha's senior management solve an extremely difficult public opinion incident. Some high-level executives who are greedy for profit may still wish that Danzo would fall from a high place, and then have the opportunity to share all kinds of attractive resources of the root-eating organization. At that time, no one will care about his Uchiha identity, and it will not affect the Uchiha family. Of course, he wouldn't tell Dashimaru this kind of intentional idea directly. Let's go back to the topic we started with. Uchiha Kyoshi said, "You said I would be interested in your experiment. I don't know what kind of interest that is." Even though the direction had been found, he still introduced it slowly, pretending not to know. While talking, the spell on Dashimaru's shoulder slowly retracted into his palm. Orochimaru glanced at his shoulder and replied, "Trees can be grafted, and cells can be transplanted. Breaking the lineage theory derived from the blood lineage, and using other people's blood lineage for my own use, this is what I am doing. Just like you can learn from Sensho Zujian to the fairy mode, but because of the bloodline, I can't learn his wooden escape anyway." Uchiha Kyoshi has to admit that Orochimaru is quite deceptive. Talk like an old sow wearing a bra, one said after another, and put yourself in the other person's perspective. No wonder he can brainwash so many people to work for him. Uchiha Kiyoshi pretended to lower his eyebrows and pondered for a while, then said, "Don't talk about those illusory truths. How is your progress?" Speaking of progress, he thought of Yamato. One of the 60 babies who were robbed by Danzo for experiments. And the only one to survive. Yamato's age in Shippuden is 27 years old, which is 3 to 4 years younger than Kakashi. Now this time point should be about 9 years old, the error is within 1 year old. Maybe Mutune training has already started under Danzo's close surveillance. It shows that the cooperation between Orochimaru and Danzo is a long-term project, which has been going on for at least several years before the Third Ninja World War. In this way, their crimes are countless, and it should not be difficult to find evidence. What's more, he can use the Palace of Rebirth system to achieve a step in the imagination of criminal investigators. Let the dead speak. Konoha may not be a standard society ruled by law, but it cannot completely ignore the power of witnesses. Moreover, what Uchiha Kiyoshi expects is only a disturbance in public opinion. Orochimaru watched the spell recede, as if watching the blade leave his neck. His mind has settled down a lot, and if he really wants to fight, he doesn't know the specific result. At least he gets no benefit. There has been some progress. Although the success rate is not high, it is not a complete failure and nothing has been achieved. Chapter 53 Orochimaru's Laboratory. Kiyoshi Uchiha put his hand off Orochimaru's shoulder. Orochimaru also dispersed the surrounding snakes. Kiyoshi Uchiha raised his eyebrows and said, "There is no evidence for what you say, how can you prove it to me?" Orochimaru grinned his thin lips and snorted twice. He felt that his guess was indeed correct. He couldn't imagine the existence of the Gusido system, thinking that Uchiha Kiyoshi also used some kind of taboo method to resurrect Senshujima. Naturally, Uchiha Kiyoshi is regarded as an existence similar to him. The desire is endless, and greedily harvests everything that is beneficial to him. Therefore, it is not surprising that Uchiha Kiyoshi's attitude has changed. From the very beginning, he thought that it was only natural to start a smooth negotiation. "Of course I can, but..." Orochimaru paused, pretending to be deep. "Can you come up with an equivalent chip?" Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled indifferently, and replied, "Aren't the spell runes I took out just enough to prove my inventory?" Uzumaki Mito, who heard this sentence, sensed something was wrong, and immediately said through a low consciousness, "Boy, I'm just helping you, but I didn't say that I would give Orochimaru such a precious thing as the sealing technique of the Uzumaki clan. Kushina hasn't learned it all yet. Auntie, I just said something casually to fool him and make him feel at ease. Besides, you can find some tricky teeth, which are difficult to learn, but it's not good to deal with them with no practical effect. Let the big snake Maru has been studying it for a year and a half, and it's too late to realize it." Quote. Mito at the other end of the whirlpool was silent for a few seconds, then Union said, "I have communicated with idiots a lot, and I feel like I have become stupid. Just do what you think." Uchiha Kiyoshi pressed his hand against the wall again, and with the help of Uzumaki Mito, he released a large number of black spells through his palm. Prove to Orochimaru that he has a good grasp of these things. Orochimaru's eyes lit up, and in a happy mood, his tongue stuck out of his mouth uncontrollably, swaying wantonly, and the picture was weird. Uchiha Kiyoshi wished he could pull out his tongue with all his strength, tie a knot, and then cut it with scissors. Orochimaru nodded slightly. "This is a good resource exchange. I can take you there now. However, your sincerity is not enough so far. I can only take you to some abandoned laboratories. The laboratories that are in use will be discussed later." Orochimaru turned around, continued to walk forward, and said slowly, "This is also my responsibility. Who can guarantee that you have other intentions? If you take away some valuable things, I will be in trouble." Although it can be dealt with, Uchiha Ching is really annoying to deal with people like Oshimaru who are ghosts and ghosts. Always calculating, always on guard, there is a feeling of insecurity that if you don't pay attention to your underwear, it will disappear. At this time, Orochimaru still doesn't want to be honest with him. In the abandoned laboratory, there are probably only abandoned instruments and outdated experimental materials. Probably can't find any direct evidence. But Uchiha Kyoshi only needs to know the names of the experiments that were abducted by Orochimaru back then. The number does not need to be large, but it is best to be a person inside Konoha, and it is best to be a ninja. The higher the status, the better, so that it can attract enough attention. He followed Orochimaru and moved in an unknown direction, saying, "You should understand the principle of the transaction. If my affairs are leaked, there will be no more." Orochimaru smiled meaningfully. "It's nice to hear you admit your secret." Kyoshi Uchiha let out a dissatisfied tisk. "Ouch, don't be angry, just a good joke. Of course I understand what you said. In order to make this high-priority transaction go smoothly, I will keep my mouth shut." When Orochimaru laughed, his long hair trembled with the frequency of the laugh. Hey, Uchiha Kyoshi felt that after he went back, he would probably feel disgusted by the tone of the sneer. Orochimaru let out a twitching cold snort at every turn, like a Cthulhu-style whisper, which made people feel mentally uncomfortable. After turning on the sage mode and enhancing his perception, Kyoshi Uchiha realized that the darkness in the depths of the alley was nothing but a barrier set by Orochimaru. It is a means of deception. In the dark sight, he repeated the movement of walking, not knowing the distance, and gradually developed a dull sense of time. It wasn't until Orochimaru stopped slowly that Kyoshi Uchiha knew that he had finished walking. That's it. Orochimaru snapped his fingers, removed the barrier, and the surrounding sight became bright again. Uchiha Kyoshi can capture the angle of the sunlight, but the surrounding environment is unfamiliar. I don't know if he is inside Konoha or outside Konoha after walking for so long. Dashimaru closed his hands, and then the phantom on the ground in front of him dissipated, and a hidden underground entrance appeared. He opened the entrance, and a cool wind hit Uchiha Kyoshi's cheek. Orochimaru entered the entrance, Uchiha Kyoshi continued to follow. The entrance is connected by a downward staircase. When the entrance was closed, no light came in, and no lights were set up. It was dark inside, and only artificial light was produced. Uchiha Kyoshi walked down holding the flame at his fingertips. Such a humid and gloomy environment will make people resist psychologically and physically, but it may be very suitable for Orochimaru. After walking about 50 steps, Orochimaru opened another door. Click. Uchiha Kyoshi took the first step in and broke a reagent bottle. Don't worry, it's just a preservative. It hasn't been tidied up here for a long time. Maybe it's the rats that sneaked in and messed up the small things here. Orochimaru bypassed the reagent beakers of various sizes scattered on the ground and came to the experimental table. Uchiha Kyoshi looked around. This is the laboratory that Orochimaru once used. If you only look at nearby objects, it is no different from a normal laboratory. A large number of labeled reagents are placed on the shelves. In addition to the name category, there are even patterns such as flammable and corrosive. Remind the experimenter to pay attention to the safety of the experiment. But looking at things in the distance, it's different. The experimental cabins are placed side by the wall. Considering the purpose and size of the experiment, it is not difficult to know that these are used to carry the experimental body. The talisman paper on the table is commonly used by medical ninjas in surgery, and can be used to control the condition of the human body. Uzumaki Mito said. She didn't need to think about it. How could Orochimaru save lives here? 9 times out of 10, these talisman papers that recorded the spells were used to forcibly change the life conditions of the experimental subjects to make them suitable for the needs of the experiment. Uzumaki Mito felt a little numb in his heart. The conversation between Kyoshi Uchiha and Orochimaru just now has made her understand enough dark things, and the anger has wave after wave, and it has gradually stagnated. I just hope that these things that upset her will be destroyed quickly. Chapter 54 The Suitable Resurrectionist. Kyoshi Uchiha pretended to be aimlessly walking around the lab. Look here, look there. Experiments are to be recorded. Judging from the traces at the scene, It should be Orochimaru was confident in his cover-up methods, so he didn't destroy all the materials. Just looking at these rags, I don't seem to have much confidence in you. Uchiha Tree deliberately complained. Don't rush, take your time. Orochimaru replied. Kiyoshi Uchiha casually opened the drawers of the desk, looking for useful things. Stacks of form paper can be seen everywhere, and the form records the status of each experimental subject in each experiment progress according to the serial number. On May 5, subject number 9 was immunosuppressed. On June 6, experimental subject 7 underwent cell transplantation, and his body collapsed 0141 hours later. Kiyoshi Uchiha flipped through it quickly. Because the titles of the experimental subjects are replaced by numbers, so it is impossible to know their names from here. Orochimaru led Uchiha Kiyoshi to the inner room. Chirp. As soon as Orochimaru opened the door, several mice jumped across the ground. He squatted down, summoned a few agile snakes, and quickly writhed on the ground to hunt and kill these mice. Kiyoshi Uchiha stepped through the door. The room was even more chaotic than the one he had been in just now. There are more experimental cabins and operating beds. A large number of rugged branches protruded from the broken position of the experimental cabin. Because the body of ordinary people cannot adapt to the cells between the columns, Mudun's power is out of control, and it pierces the body before it is fully integrated with its own organ system. Even after a long time, the bloodstains left by the blood splashed by the experimental subject when the body collapsed can still be seen on the branches. Look, this is the power of Mudun that has reappeared in the world since Kihonsho Zujian. Although it looks unstable, it is like the first light shining into the darkness. It has the possibility of success. Uchiha Kiyoshi heard Senju Hashirama's annoyed grunt through the space of consciousness. It seems that you have collected a lot of people for this experiment, from civilians to ninjas. Uchiha Kiyoshi said while continuing to search in the drawer. Orochimaru replied. Of course, sufficient experimental materials can ensure the number of experiments and make steady progress. Uchiha Kiyoshi opened one drawer after another. When he pulled the bottom drawer, he found that there was no response to slight force, and it was locked. Oshimaru, what's in here? Uchiha Kiyoshi asked. Orochimaru took a closer look, put his hand on the lock and fiddled with it twice. He lifted the lock and let the light shine on it, and the tiny spell words were displayed on the already small lock. It was only then that Uchiha Kiyo discovered that the lock had no keyhole. Orochimaru injected his own chakra, the lock opened with a sound, and the contents of the drawer were taken out. A dusty booklet was placed in Orochimaru's hands. Orochimaru turned a few pages and said, "It's about some high-quality experimental subjects. Most of them are ninjas, and some of them have special identities. Therefore, we need to spend more time to clear up the troubles, so as not to let the teacher notice the clues." Uchiha Kiyoshi blinked quickly. Finally found. Ninjas who can use chakra should have a higher success rate than ordinary people. Uchiha Kiyoshi said that although the target appeared, it is better to take a detour. Orochimaru nodded. Of course, in addition to this, blood and natural physique are more important factors. In addition, another purpose of my coming to you is to ask for your opinion. I really want to try it on you. Just imagine, will it go well if you accept the cell transplant with the fairy mode turned on? Orochimaru patted the dust off the booklet, and continued to flip through it, with a slight smile on his face. Also, don't forget your Uchiha blood. Uchiha Chingshin thought it was unnecessary. You have cultured Hashirama cells, and I have a whole Senju Hashirama. Forget it, even if the success rate is 99%, I'm afraid of becoming that unfortunate one. Think of it as dedicating yourself to science. Orochimaru joked coldly. Kiyoshi Uchiha stared at Orochimaru's hand. Can I see this? Orochimaru retracted his palm and closed the booklet. Yes, but this item is a little more important. Do you have something to exchange? Uchiha Kiyoshi thought for a while, and greeted Uzumaki Mito through consciousness. Sister Mito tilde. What he can directly take out is Uzumaki Mito's sealing technique. Uzumaki Mito is very knowledgeable and has mastered many types of spells, not all of which are very useful. What is displayed in normal battles is the essence. If you trade with Orochimaru, you can use some unorthodox methods to deal with it. Uzumaki Mito smiled and said. Although the old body is resurrected with a young posture, it is still not used to this kind of address. It is enough to call it occasionally. I understand, you leave your body to me to control. Kiyoshi Uchiha casually picked up a piece of white paper, and pressed his hand on it. Densely packed black spells quickly covered the whole paper. Uzumaki Mito explained. This is a technique that can control the state of the skin. I often use it to dispel the accumulated melanin in the skin, which is often called whitening. White. Kiyoshi Uchiha glanced at Orochimaru's face, which was whiter than 3 layers of foundation, and felt a bit of mischief from Grandma Mito. This is very practical for women who love beauty, but for Uncle Snake. Mito, is this really okay? What if Orochimaru finds out? Didn't you ask me to teach a difficult and useless spell? Except for the form of the spell, I will not teach other details. The basic idea of the Uzumaki clan's technique is quite different from the ordinary sealing technique. Even the good talent of Orochimaru is difficult to fully grasp. What's more, if he is lucky enough to learn it, you will say that there is a problem with his method of use, and that your teaching is fine, and the effect is not like this. Quote, older gingers are more spicy. If the atmosphere didn't allow it, Uchiha Kiyoshi would like to show a kind smile to Orochimaru. Unexpectedly, Uzumaki Mito is also such a witty person. Uchiha Kiyoshi handed the paper to Orochimaru. Orochimaru took it with great interest. I can hardly understand it, but it is indeed the style of the Uzumaki family. From the structure point of view, it is very clever. Uchiha Kiyoshi said with a smile. Yes, I can still give you inferior goods. Uchiha Kiyoshi took the booklet in Orochimaru's hand, concentrated and focused on each name. Katsumura Yoda, Shinobu. Ito Takuma, Chunin. Many names flashed in front of his eyes. Because of the limitation of his willpower, the number of people he could summon was limited, so he could only choose the most representative ones. Half a minute later, Uchiha Kiyoshi's fast-flipping hand slowed down and stayed on a certain page. He stared at one of the lines, thinking that this was almost the right person. Hinata Hiroki, male, Hinata branch, Jonin, member of Ondi. Note: this person has a special status, please handle with caution. Chapter 55. Uchiha Kiyoshi had to admire the courage of Danzo and Orochimaru. People from the Hyuga family also dared to use it for experiments. This person is directly under Hokage's Anbu and has a dual identity. But thinking of the other crazier actions of the two of them, it seems that this is nothing. Orochimaru noticed subtle changes in Uchiha Kiyoshi's movements and expressions. Oh, did you notice something interesting? Kiyoshi Uchiha replied. I saw a person from the Hyuga family. It is said that the Hyuga family has a certain connection with the blood of the Sage of the Six Paths. Did you choose him because of this? Orochimaru replied. I don't know the long story so clearly, but some reasonable attempts are necessary. After Uchiha Kiyoshi finished reading the roster, Oshimaru made seals with both hands. Flames erupted from the corners of the roster, and the spreading flames quickly engulfed the entire roster. Before Kiyoshi Uchiha had time to extinguish it with the water escape, there was only a mass of black dry carbonized ashes left in his hand. Uchiha Kiyoshi stared at Orochimaru dissatisfiedly and said, What do you mean? Orochimaru smiled and spread his hands and said, You didn't teach me how to use these spells, so I can't let you take out this booklet full of information. Uchiha Kiyoshi frowned. Orochimaru is indeed very cautious. He is afraid that Uchiha Kiyoshi will take this booklet out and hand it over to Sandai Hokage. But Uchiha Kiyoshi only needs to know the names of people, and the roster is not necessary. It does not affect subsequent expansions. After wandering around the abandoned underground laboratory of Orochimaru for a few minutes, Uchiha Kiyoshi followed him to the ground. Walking on the road, there are always some snakes entrenched around Orochimaru. Uchiha Kiyoshi glanced at these little snakes and said, Because of communicating with you, I missed the best time to buy vegetables. You give me some of your snakes so that I can go back to stew the snake meat. Orochimaru was a little puzzled and said, "Are you some kind of obscure metaphor or do you really want to eat snake meat?" Uchiha Ching replied, "I'm a restaurant owner, is it weird to find fresh ingredients? I was thinking too much. Since it's just for cooking, an ordinary snake will be fine." Orochimaru whistled, and immediately 5 fat-looking snakes crawled to his feet. "That's enough. Enough." Uchiha Kiyoshi found that if snakes were used as good ingredients, it seemed less uncomfortable. "Your name is Orochimaru, won't it hurt to see your own snake being served on the table?" Kiyoshi Uchiha joked. "They will gladly accept my arrangement," Orochimaru said indifferently. Uchiha Kiyoshi was speechless for a moment. Orochimaru took Uchiha Kiyoshi back to his familiar area. Before parting, Orochimaru said to Uchiha Kiyoshi, "I hope to cooperate with you for a long time. I am very interested in the content you have. Although I may not stay in Konoha for a long time, my dear teacher will gradually notice something is wrong. But the cooperation will not be interrupted because of this." Uchiha Kiyoshi walked forward sullenly, without responding. The next time he meets Dashawan, he will have a good chat with Dashawan about the advancement of science and technology and the rejuvenation of the country through science and education. Uzumaki Mito replaced Kiyoshi Uchiha behind Konoha's checkout counter to collect cash and keep accounts. A group of customers were overjoyed to find that Wadao Restaurant finally had a female employee. Uzumaki Mito has a beautiful appearance and a dignified temperament. She passed away with the memory of an old man. Her movements were calm and slow, but because of her quick and accurate thinking, she was able to handle small matters in restaurants with ease. Sitting behind the cash register is like a female bodhisattva. The customers who were originally very relieved were surprised. This female employee was obviously good-looking, but seeing her soothing movements, kind smile, and gentle breath revealed between her brows. I always want to go up to her and say hello to her, saying, "Hello Grandma." Not in the mood to appreciate beauty at all. Uchiha Kiyoshi placed a large bookshelf by the wall of the restaurant. The bookshelf is made of wooden traps between the thousand-handed pillars, which is very convenient to make. There are not many entertainment methods in this era, and reading books and newspapers are relatively common pastimes. Top it with some popular books in today's newspaper. Holding up the book, customers can quickly pass the time of waiting for meals. On the other hand, Kiyoshi Uchiha is also using the traffic from his restaurant to promote his just-published One Piece. Put the first volume on the bookshelf, and go to the bookstore to buy it if you want to read the rest. Ebisu came to Hinata Restaurant and ordered simple meals. He sat at the table with his head propped on his palms. He turned his head and saw that he hadn't been here for a few days. There was a large bookshelf that stood out by the wall. He came to the bookshelf curiously and browsed the titles. He has read all the popular books in general, but he is not interested. One Piece. Ebisu pulled out One Piece. He had never seen a book that used pirates as a narrative theme. The current mainstream of novels is either ninja or samurai. Pirates are not a positive image, it seems a bit deviant. Ebisu turned to one of the pages casually. He knew that a book was not used to reading from the beginning. He used to read from the middle, and if he was interested, he would come to the beginning and read again. Nami is wearing a swimsuit and standing on the deck of the Golden Mary, holding the rudder in her hand, controlling the direction of the sailing. The long chirping of seagulls stretches away with the flight trajectory, and the undulating waves lift the ship, like shaking the cradle of dreams. Close black lens bracket. Sanji came out of the kitchen, just in time to witness Nami's hot body and orange hair blown by the refreshing sea breeze. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. His nose bleeds. He raised his hands and cheered. Miss Nami looks so sexy in a swimsuit. Close black lens bracket. Ebisu frowned, realizing that the book was not simple. How could Konoha's book have such vulgar descriptions? Ebisu whispered to himself forcefully. Having received Konoha's complete education, he closed the book angrily and was about to put it back on the shelf. The minds of young people should not be corrupted by such things. As soon as he heard the sound of the book closing, the previous description resurfaced in his mind and formed a picture. Voyager Nami's slender waist and broad chest is a beautiful landscape in the sea. No, I'm going to read this book with a critical attitude. Ebisu covered her nose, opened the book again with great determination, and read carefully. I completely forgot that I was in a restaurant for dinner. After a few minutes, Ebisu sighed with emotion. It turns out that Nicole Robin is also a very attractive big sister. Time was running out, and Ebisu picked the content to read. He nodded while looking at it, with a serious expression. His face was almost glued to the book. Uchiha Kiyoshi stood on the second floor and looked down. He is happy to see his customers immerse themselves in the One Piece story he reprinted. It's just that he didn't quite understand why some teenagers as old as Ebisu would blush. In order to pass Konoha's review, his descriptions are obviously very restrained. The content that could have been described in detail has been replaced by highly generalized vocabulary. It seems that the spiritual life of the Konoha people is still too lacking. Hopefully they will remember the author's name. Uchiha Kiyoshi murmured. Chapter 56 Preheating. Seeing the restaurant getting more and more lively, Uchiha Kiyoshi was very relieved. Although he has contributed a lot of feasible ideas, but the real implementation depends on this group of capable employees. At the end of the year summary, everyone has to comment on in progress. The idea in Kiyoshi Uchiha's heart is to let Hinata Restaurant go out of Konoha and step into the world. In the peacetime after the war, cultural output is carried out through a series of products. For example, an idol group concert is held in the hidden village of the 5 great countries. Let the big guys from the land of thunder wear cute cheering costumes, hold up light sticks and shout the idol's name. It's a pity that his restaurant is limited to this small area because of the enchantment of the Hall of Rebirth. Depressed his further ideas of opening chain stores and so on. But it's not entirely hopeless. This high-cold system will always give him effective help when unexpected. Although there will be no greetings in advance, there will be many who should come. Kiyoshi Uchiha rested on the rocking chair. Most of the time, he would help the 4 employees, and when he was tired, he would go upstairs to sit and lie down for a while. This is the prerogative of the boss. The breeze was blowing, and the soft rocking chair supported the back, which was very comfortable. He turned his head to look at the scenery of Konoha outside the window. The white clouds are long, the sky is bright and the air is clear, and the streets and alleys are pleasant. Today's weather and mood are not bad. Let's continue to think about how to organize Danzo. I got the name of a special experimental subject in Orochimaru's laboratory before. Hinata Hiroki. The Hyuga clan, Jonin, and Onbi members have all the elements. Thank you Danzo for digging a hole for yourself. Although it's a branch that doesn't receive so much attention, it doesn't matter. When there is a conflict between the main family and the sub-family, the Hyuga clan will undoubtedly favor the main family. And when there is a conflict between the branch family and outsiders who are not from the Hyuga clan will definitely support the branch family. Although the Hyuga family has never had a top powerhouse, the family is prosperous and their status in Konoha village is also very high. Jonin already belonged to the elite of a family, and Hyuga Hyuzu would never let it go if his life was taken so absurdly. When other family patriarchs know about this, they will definitely think of the strange disappearance of some of their own clansmen, and wonder if they were also snatched by Danzo and Orochimaru by special means. The fire ignited, and if it is not extinguished by the flood, it will only burn more and more vigorously, and burn all over the field. Hinata Hiroki provides a reasonable reason for killing Danzo. But Kiyoshi Uchiha still needs a chance to meet Danzo. Relying on the powerful enchantment technique that Uzumaki Mito can release immediately, as long as he can meet Danzo, he will never let Danzo escape. If the Kionshubagian is summoned, there is also the technique of Flying Thunder God as a guarantee. Danzo has been commanding the root organization in the dark, and his whereabouts are unpredictable. Uchiha Kiyoshi doesn't know where the root organization's base and stronghold are. But there are ways for Danzo to take the initiative to contact him. Uchiha Kiyoshi stood up from the recliner and walked downstairs. The matter of the disappearance of the corpse had not been resolved before, so he walked out of the Wadao restaurant and headed towards the Uchiha clan. Speaking of which, after he ran Wadao restaurant, he seldom stayed in Wei nationality. When he came to the low wall of the Uchiha clan, he looked up at the houses inside the wall. He has been idle in the courtyard of the family land for a long time, and he hasn't come back to clean it for many days. The door was closed tightly. Summer has passed, and it is gradually entering late autumn, and the steps are full of fallen leaves. But he didn't bother to take care of it anymore, so it was fine to just leave it alone. Meow tilde. Several cats of different fur colors crouched on the low wall, rubbing their faces against each other, and lazily took catwalks along the eaves of the wall. Although the door is closed, cats can turn in at will without being repelled by the owner, and play freely to find their nests. It has become a paradise for cats. Uchiha Kiyoshi continued to move forward. He was going to discuss matters with Uchiha Fugaku. On a whim, he immediately shared his vision with Uchiha Madara, so that Uchiha Madara could also feel the atmosphere here. Madara, do you miss this place? Miss. I almost smeared the plate on the guest's face. Can you give me a call in advance? Uchiha Madara's tone is always so blunt. What does that matter? With your temperament, the customer must be the one who apologizes in the end. Kiyoshi Uchiha joked. There was a moment of silence on the other side of consciousness. I really want to kill you. Uchiha Madara said bitterly. Uchiha Kiyo smiled. He was used to Uchiha Madara talking angrily like this. Uchiha Madara went to the dark place and used the shadow clone technique to let the shadow clone help him work. Every brick and tile in his vision can evoke distant and deep memories. Decades ago, he led his clan and the Thousand Hands to establish Konoha here. At that time, he fantasized that his people could enjoy a peaceful life leisurely like white clouds flowing in the sky. Uchiha Madara couldn't help laughing at himself. Childish. Hurry up and cancel the vision sharing. There is really nothing to see here. It will be rather embarrassing. You don't need to go through one by one to know that there are more and more idle houses here, and the owners of the houses died on the battlefield. And the surviving people are suspected of being a risk factor that endangers Konoha's safety. Don't you think it's absurd? Before Uchiha Madara wanted to talk about it, Uchiha Kiyoshi interrupted. What you said makes sense, but please don't sell me your Moon Eye plan. Then you should hurry up and stop sharing your vision. After happily chatting with Uchiha Madara, Uchiha Kiyoya came to Uchiha Fugaku's door. After knocking on the door creaked open. The fragrant scent hooked Uchiha Kiyoshi's nose playfully, making him a little shy. Today is a lucky day to see the gentle and beautiful Mrs. Makoto. Sister Mikan. Uchiha Makoto smiled, her eyes bent into tiny crescents. You still remember the joke I made with you last time. What's the matter? Uchiha Kiyoshi explained his purpose of coming, and it happened that Uchiha Fugaku was also at home, so he came directly to the courtyard. Itachi, as long as there is room for improvement, don't take chances. Remember what I told you, pursue the ultimate. In the courtyard, Uchiha Itachi was practicing shuriken, and Uchiha Fugaku sat beside the field and gave serious guidance. Seeing Uchiha Kiyoshi's arrival, Uchiha Fugaku was a little surprised, knowing that his arrival would definitely bring useful information. When Uchiha Itachi heard Uchiha Kiyoshi's voice, he turned his head and laughed innocently. Since the last time we met, Kiyoshi Uchiha would give him a cup of Kon every time he went to Wadao restaurant after dinner. I feel that this big brother is very nice. Just don't know why he often has some weird conversations with himself. Such as, Itachi, family comes first, family members come second. Let me ask you, I fell into the river with the third Hokage, who do you save? I will save the 3 Hokages. Wrong answer, your Kon today is mustard flavored. But I feel that the third Hokage-sama is more important. Just eat the mustard, brat. Uchiha Fugaku saw Uchiha Itachi thinking wildly, and said in a stern tone. Itachi, don't be distracted. Chapter 57 Substitutes for Task Execution. Uchiha Kiyoshi and Uchiha Fugaku sat face to face. In fact, Uchiha Kiyoshi knew that Uchiha Fugaku would go to the Wadao restaurant to buy snacks every Wednesday afternoon, and looked for opportunities to talk to him by the way. But he still took the initiative to come to Uchiha Fugaku. The main purpose is to eat the snacks made by Uchiha Makoto. Shing, do you have any clues when you come here this time? Uchiha Fugaku asked with anticipation. No, but I thought of a way. Have you thought of a way? Uchiha Fugaku straightened up slightly, his eyes brightened. Uchiha nodded. It's not complicated. There are only so many people in our family who have sharing eyes. In short, I want to perform tasks on their behalf. Uchiha Fugaku whispered, oh, and immediately understood what Uchiha Kiyoshi meant. Excellent hunters often appear as prey. Use yourself as bait to attract the target. When those with malicious intentions show their malice, they will take off their disguise and counterattack. Uchiha Fugaku pondered for a moment, thinking about whether there were any loopholes in this plan. But you don't share sharing eyes, will it be seen? Uchiha Fugaku doesn't doubt Uchiha Kiyoshi's strength, but the details still need to be considered. Uchiha Ching said affirmatively. This is not a problem. Whether it is the transformation technique or other methods, it is not difficult to disguise the appearance. Transformation is a simple, basic ninjutsu with a difficulty level of E, and most children who have graduated from ninja schools can master it. But it can often bring magical effects, and the price is extremely high. Uchiha Kiyoshi continued. My opinion is that it's better to look for newcomers who have just started Sharingan. They are the easiest to target. Sharingan is the goal of Danzo. However, young ninjas lack strength and experience, so they are easily captured by Danzo's men secretly. Therefore, we should focus on young people who have just started Sharingan. Uchiha Fugaku nodded thoughtfully. Indeed. He squinted his eyes and quickly confirmed the information of each clansman in his mind. During the war, there were quite a lot of life and death on the battlefield, so it is true that several young clansmen have recently opened Sharingan. I remembered that there is a clansman named Uchiha Hideaki who is a little younger than you. He opened Sharingan after a mission last week, and he is currently recuperating in the hospital due to injuries. Uchiha Ching replied. Then trouble the patriarch to help me keep an eye on his movements. If he is going to accept the task, please contact me and I will execute it on his behalf. If there are other clansmen in similar situations besides him, please pay attention and inform them. It is good. Uchiha Fugaku let out a sigh of relief, and the deep fog that was stagnant in his heart finally showed signs of loosening. He was still at a loss as to how to deal with it afterwards. The two talked for a while, and Uchiha Makoto's pastries were served on the table according to Uchiha Kiyoshi's expectations. After eating the pastries, Kiyoshi Uchiha felt that there was no need to continue the chat. Then he got up and set off to go back to Wadao restaurant. Uchiha Kiyoshi walked to the door of Hinata restaurant and greeted Uzumaki Mito habitually. It's hard work. Uzumaki Mito, who lowered his head to settle accounts, raised his head and saw Kiyoshi Uchiha, and immediately winked at him quietly. He glanced at the lobby again. Uchiha Kiyoshi looked in the direction of Uzumaki Mito's eyes. Beside the pillar, there are two ordinary-looking guests who are eating. Uzumaki Mito told Uchiha Kiyoshi through consciousness. These two are here to monitor us, and my malicious perception ability has detected slight maliciousness in them. Uchiha Kiyoshi immediately retracted his eyes to avoid arousing their suspicion. There were spies in his small restaurant. Konoha's intelligence personnel are either from Anbu or root organizations. Anbu is under the direct management of Hokage, and it is absolutely impossible for Sarutobi Hiruzen to send someone over to monitor them. Then it can only be Danzo's subordinates. It should be Orochimaru who disclosed the cooperation with him to Danzo. According to the agreement, the matter between Kionshujujian and them cannot be disclosed, otherwise the cooperation will break down. Then Danzo should just send someone to monitor his movements out of his extreme caution. Although they paid for their meals, Kiyoshi Uchiha didn't want to receive customers with ulterior motives. When he came to the back kitchen, Uchiha Madara was lighting the newly added firewood with a fire escape. Firewood was voluntarily provided by Senju Hashirama. It's really hard to ignite the firewood made by this wooden escape in Zujian. Uchiha Madara complained in his heart. He glanced sideways and saw Kiyoshi Uchiha, and immediately understood. Uchiha Madara just stood in the lobby for a few seconds before realizing that two people were behaving abnormally. I found two suspicious guys sitting by the pillars. Uchiha Madara also conveyed this information to Uchiha Kiyoshi, which completely agrees with Uzumaki Mito's judgment. Uchiha Kiyoshi pointed to his eyes, and Uchiha Madara tapped between his brows, injecting pupil power into them. Uchiha Kiyoshi came to the table where Danzo's subordinates were sitting, and said with his hands behind his back. 2. Is the food delicious? One of them pretended to be innocent and said. Of course, it's very satisfying. Uchiha Kiyoshi narrowed his eyes and smiled, and when he opened it again, black guyu appeared in his pupils. The two of them immediately sensed something was wrong, but before they could react, their bodies were frozen by the illusion. The art of illusion. The victim will feel the pain of being pierced by nails all over the body, and can't move at all. Pupil illusions cannot be dispelled by themselves. In just a moment, the sharp pain that ran through the body made the two of them miserable, as if their nerves were about to tremble violently. Opening their mouths, they wanted to howl, but they were not allowed to make any strange noises under this situation. In order to prevent them from passing out on the spot after suffering the pain, Uchiha Kiyoshi stopped the illusion after only half a minute. Ha ha. Danzo's two subordinates were weak all over, sweat poured down uncontrollably, and their consciousness was already on the verge of blurring. The two stood up with difficulty and walked out anxiously. Now that it has been discovered, it is completely impossible to stay here. Uchiha Kiyoshi did not stop them. The ordinary customer next to him glanced at the two behaving strangely, and murmured. Drinking like this. The road is not stable. Danzo's two subordinates were like escapees being chased by monsters. Every time they approached the threshold, their pace became firmer. You want to leave now? Kiyoshi Uchiha put his hands on the shoulders of the two of them calmly. The minds of the two members of the root organization were completely disturbed by the bland sound. They exchanged a look, and then turned their heads tremblingly. What else? Uchiha said unhappily. It hasn't been paid yet. Chapter 58. After hearing Uchiha Kiyoshi's warning, the two root organization members trembled for a while with already trembling legs. Like a football player trying to reach a touchdown, he eagerly puts the bill on the till and walks away without looking back, without asking for change. Uzumaki Mito put the money in the drawer with satisfaction, glanced outside the door indifferently, and said through consciousness. Shing, do you think Danzo will send someone? It doesn't matter, they are not welcome anyway. Uchiha Kiyoshi turned his head and looked at the leisurely diners all over the shop, and said calmly. Outside the street, at the gate of the casino, Tsunade walked out of the gate of the casino with dark circles under his eyes, drooping his head, as if he had lost his soul. When I went in, I was carrying a huge sum of money and was full of fighting spirit. When I came out, I only had one meal money left in my pocket. The sun is so dazzling. Tsunade reached out to block the sun. The return of Lin Zan for 2 days and 2 nights turned out to be nothing. When will my luck improve? It is said that it is extremely peaceful. No matter how people go to the bottom of the valley, they will go up, but Tsunade feels that he has been sitting on a slide. The heavy sleepiness on her body and the frustration of losing money made her want to go home and have a good sleep. But I haven't eaten for a long time, my stomach is already growling, and my hunger is unbearable. Let's go have a meal first. Tsunade muttered, then sighed softly. She sometimes feels that she is not going to gamble, because although gambling is based on common sense, you lose more than you win, but there are always times when you win. She felt deeply that she was doing charity work. I don't know when, Tsunade found himself famous in the gambling world. The legendary Big Sheep. Others have domineering titles like, God of Gamblers, and, God's Hand. She is probably the first to get a famous nickname because she loses money steadily. Every gambler was delighted to hear her coming. Tsunade covered her forehead with her hand, and said to herself sadly. My goal is obviously to become a man of the hour who makes the gambling world fearful, so why have I gradually developed in the direction of a mascot? After walking in a daze for a while, Tsunade heard lively voices in his ears. Looking up, the plaque reads, Flower Road Restaurant, and next to it is Uchiha's Tuonfin family emblem. Wadao Restaurant, I heard it has a good reputation, but I don't think I've ever been here before. Tsunade carefully held a 100 tael bill in his pocket, fearing that it would be blown away by the wind, and walked in step by step. Uzumaki Mito saw his granddaughter entering the door, and smiled from the bottom of his heart while trying to make calculations. Before she could say hello to Sensho Zujian had already moved to her side, talking in a low voice. Tsunade has grown so big. Sensho Zujian quietly looked at his beloved little granddaughter. Although the little girl back then had grown to the age of his aunt, he still felt very intimate and familiar. The eyes are still the girl doll with pigtails and laughing while holding money in both hands. However, there are still some places that make him feel completely strange. Honey, do our two families have this gene? Senju Bashima's eyes fell on Tsunade's heavy upper body, and he frowned, feeling that it was not a trivial matter. Uzumaki Mito glared at Senju Hashirama unhappily, and asked in a low voice. You think I'm young? She stretched out her hand and grabbed Kionju Zujian's ear vigorously. Sensho Zujian hurriedly dodged and hurriedly explained. I didn't mean that, it was purely out of concern and curiosity. Uzumaki Mito continued to make calculations, and blamed. I've lived to the second life and still pay attention to these boring things. It's not strange. It's not easy to change the body shape with medical ninjutsu. Kiyonsho Zujian retracted his eyes and said. That's true. Girls love beauty and will always try their best to make themselves look better. Our granddaughter also has a more forthright character. As soon as they saw Tsunade, Senju Hashima and Uzumaki Mito remembered that their granddaughter was already in her 30s and hadn't made any major decisions in her life yet. Although I know that the relationship between a man and a woman is your love and my wish, it is not easy for others to interfere. But as grandparents, they are also really anxious. Uchiha Kiyoshi, who was continuing to write One Piece on the second floor, suddenly received a consciousness message from Senjujuma. Shing, what do you think about my Tsunade's granddaughter's emotional problems? Uchiha Kiyoshi put down his pen, frowned intently, trying to think like an emotional expert. Half a minute later, Uchiha Kiyoshi stretched his brows and replied slowly. Although I think about this question very much, unfortunately, I am still young and have never been in love. The first time I touched a girl's hand was when I was helping a female classmate pick up erasers. This question is serious for me. It's over the top. Although in terms of general rationality, he feels that his appearance is above average and will not become a disadvantageous factor in the relationship between men and women. But during the ninja school where there are more opportunities to meet girls, he is doing handstand and other gymnastics training with mate Kai all day long. The terrible thing is that one day he actually put on the green tights at the instigation of Mat K. Therefore, most of the girls have special views on him and dare not communicate with him in depth. Uchiha Kiyoshi was a little speechless. Two elderly people who lived more than 100 years old came to ask him about this young man. Kiyonsho Zujian suddenly realized. I almost forgot that your identity is Reaper, and it's normal not to know anything about the mundane world. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled helplessly, and replied. Actually, Tsunade has a childhood sweetheart male partner named Jiraiya, who is also a disciple of Sarutobi Hiruzen, and also the master of Namikaze Minato you have seen. He has a deep affection for Tsunade for decades. Affection. Just knowing his identity, Sensho Zujian felt that Jiraiya should also be a more reliable person, so he could continue to learn more. From what you've said, it seems that Jiraiya has remained single because he protects Tsunade. He must be in his 30s. Exactly. Sensho Zuma shook his head, feeling that the child was too stupid. Then what will Tsunade do to him? Senju Bashima continued to ask with concern. Uchiha Kiyoshi can't tell. At the time before Jiraiya went to Rain Ninja Village to investigate pain, Tsunade should have accepted Jiraiya. After all, being able to say something like, "It's time for him to stop being cool when he comes back," has already proved Tsunade's intentions. But now, Kiyoshi Uchiha is not the person involved, so naturally he can't figure it out. He tapped his head with a headache. Why let him, who has zero emotional experience, think about such complicated things? But it seems that Uzumaki Mito and Senju Zuma hope that he will help solve Tsunade's emotional problems. From a personal point of view, he also hopes that Jiraiya and Tsunade can be together. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm the god of death, not the god of love. However, I will try to help, and take your time with the relationship." Take your time. Sensho Zujian nodded to himself as if he had been instructed. He walked to the bookshelf, carefully picked out a few books, and then carried them to Tsunade. "Miss, you have to wait for a while before the food is served. There is a new bookshelf in the store, and you can borrow it for free to pass the time. I picked a few books for you. See if you are interested." Tsunade suddenly felt a familiar aura approaching, raised his head curiously, and found that it was an unfamiliar uncle. Chapter 59. I've known you for a long time. Did I lose consciousness? Tsunade rubbed the center of his brows. Obviously this uncle didn't know him at all. She shook her head, thinking that it might just be that this uncle's temperament and appearance are very kind. Tsunade squinted her eyes to carefully read the name of the book that Senju Hashimama recommended to her. Who will you think of when you're lonely? Flowers blooming and straightening. Companionship is the longest confession of love. The moonlight is so beautiful. Why are they all books about youth and romance? The corners of Tsunade's eyes twitched. She was in her 30s, long past the age of reading this kind of book. It's just that as soon as the names of these books appeared in her eyes, she subconsciously evoked associations, and she didn't know why the man's deep back suddenly flashed in her mind. Lonely. Companionship. Long love. He scratched his head and smirked, obviously expressing his confession seriously, but he always acted as if he didn't care. It was obviously very sad to be rejected, but other people knew it at a glance. Tears were about to drip from the eyes, and he wanted to say some free and easy words to be handsome, to prove that he was a handsome man. The moonlight is so beautiful, which is also what Jiraiya often chanted when he was alone with her. Of course Tsunade knew the meaning behind this sentence. A young man of 17 or 18 would blush when he heard this sentence. How could she not know? The flowers can be folded straight and must be folded. The tenderness and sentimentality that flashed in Tsunade's eyes were keenly captured by Senju Hashimama. He deliberately selected books whose titles could be linked to Jiraiya's identity. Long-term love and companionship are the key words of Jiraiya. Things are right, Mito. Tsunade seems to have feelings for Jiraiya too. Senju Zuma happily reported the situation to Uzumaki Mito through consciousness. Can you be more particular about what you say? Anyway, you have been Hokage before. Uzumaki Mito replied. Although I just thought your method was a bit too straightforward, I didn't expect it to be quite useful. I often say that sometimes the simplest method is also the most effective method, but you still don't believe it. Qian Shujujian said proudly with his hands on his hips. Tsunade looked at the titles of these books, feeling complicated, hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand lightly and said. Forget it, I think everyone is reading the book called One Piece, please help me get that book. Sensho Zuma searched carefully on the bookshelf, and found that One Piece had been taken. Sorry, everyone is rushing to read this book, and it has already been taken. Are you looking for this, Tsunade? A third voice intervened, causing Senju Bashima to turn his head unexpectedly. The man who suddenly appeared next to him was born with white hair, tall, with an easy-going face and firm gaze. There are red stripes under both eyes. And when looking at Tsunade, his eyes are a little unnatural, which is very inconsistent with his outgoing and hearty temperament. Senju Zuma felt that this should be the Jiraiya mentioned by Kiyoshi Uchiha. Hearing the familiar voice, Tsunade's face blushed slightly, but the degree was very slight. Neither Senju Hashirama nor Jiraiya noticed it. Why did he appear as soon as I thought of it? Jiraiya placed One Piece on the table in front of Tsunade. Tsunade curled his lips, his eyebrows clustered together, and he habitually said in a dissatisfied tone. Jiraiya, you've been here a long time ago, why didn't I find you? Ji Lai also laughed and joked. You discovered it all, so it can still be called tailgating. After saying this mischievous sentence, Jiraiya hastily stepped back a few steps, covering his face with his arms. Muscle memory told him that whenever he said such indecent words, Tsunade would immediately use his fists to make him feel the strange force that penetrated the rock. But after waiting for a long time, the bridge of the nose did not break, which made Zilai feel a little disappointed. Tsunade just stared at him with raised eyebrows, clenched his fists but didn't make a move. Zilai was also curious. Tsunade, you don't look like you've been drinking or getting drunk. How come your temper has changed so much? Tsunade sighed, let go of his fist and said. Why do you always use the tricks of teasing little girls on me like you did when you were a child? It's like playing house. I don't beat you because I just lost everything. If I break something, I won't be able to pay it back. It's getting worse. And Tsunade picked up the novel beside him. I just wanted to read this book, and you kindly brought it for me, so I don't bother to argue with you. Jiraiya smiled in a good mood, taking this opportunity to sit at the same table with Tsunade naturally. Let me order a few more dishes. I haven't eaten yet. You won't drive me away, will you? I won't drive you away, but I have no money to invite you. Tsunade replied casually, watching One Piece carefully, and found the content inside to be quite interesting. Then I'll treat you. Jilai also ticked many boxes on the menu and handed it to Sensho Bashirama. Neither of them knew that this waiter was the original Hokage. It's hard to find such a good opportunity, but I won't thank you for such a small thing. Tsunade's eyes softened unconsciously. Zilai also put on airs and said. It's so stinky, who wants your gratitude? If you say a word, thank you, I won't invite you. It would be great if your attitude towards Orochimaru was as hard as your mouth is now. Tsunade teased Jiraiya unceremoniously. The two of them already knew some information about Orochimaru's going astray. Can you talk about something lighter? Zilai also complained. Sensho Zujian added a sentence in a timely manner. Sir, our shop has snake meat hot pot recently. Point. As soon as Dashuan was mentioned, Zilai felt very angry and wanted to eat snake meat. Senju Bashima came to Uzumaki Mido to whisper to Tsunade and Jiraiya after finishing their busy work, and showed a relieved, anti-smile, when looking at Tsunade and Jiraiya. Although he also knew that Tsunade and Jiraiya would not suddenly come together because of such a trivial matter. But progress is a good thing. He wanted to see Tsunade gradually open up his closed heart. The two of them really look like they've known each other for a long time, and they keep talking. Uzumaki Mido smiled and said. This young man is casual on the surface, but he is actually calm and down to earth. I can hear clearly that he is usually a womanizer, but he has been in love with Tsunade for so long. It's really interesting. Sensho Zujian sighed. Although it has been resurrected, I often feel that I can't keep up with the times. Young people have young people's stories, and there are independent chapters that belong only to them. After all, we are the remnants of the old era. Uzumaki Mido replied. You don't have to say that, just try to adapt. Sensho Zujian stroked his chin and thought. I have never cared about money, and I have never mentioned salary to Ching before. But now I want to mention it to Ching. On the day Tsunade got married, I couldn't say nothing. Uzumaki Mido moved the beads with his fingers, making a pop sound. Help me mention it too. Uchiha Kiyoshi sat on the second floor and looked at the situation below, feeling that his restaurant seemed to have taken on quite a few functions. Chapter 60. Kiyoshi Uchiha said he was going to help, but Senju Hashirama quickly and successfully completed an assist. Emotional matters should be left to experienced elders. Uchiha Kiyoshi looked at the manuscript paper on the table, and suddenly felt that it would take too much time to write it down by himself. Besides, He also wanted to try other themes. He summoned Chang's avatar and gave him a pen and a stack of manuscript paper. The shadow clone moved its wrist and wrote the title on the manuscript paper. My youth love story really has a problem. Danzo-sama. Not long after the two of us sat down at the Wadao restaurant, Kiyoshi Uchiha discovered him, and then got caught in his Sharingan illusion and was kicked out. Recalling the heart-wrenching pain at that time, Danzo's subordinates still have lingering fears. Was the disguise training you participated in before this all child's play? Dim candlelight, dim room, cold and blunt tone. Danzo likes to create such a depressing atmosphere to communicate with his subordinates. The oppression at the psychological level will be transformed into motivation for action, and will increase the acceptance of all orders. As a member of the root organization, efficiency can come second, but obedience must come first. One of the things he regretted the most in his life was when the second Hokage, Sensho Tomona, was about to die, when he sent them a test and asked who would be the queen. He hesitated, and didn't express his determination before Hirozuru Sarutobi. The position of Hokage was missed in this sentence, and I regret it. So, from now on, he always wanted to keep everything firmly in his own hands. Dividing everyone with tool people and stumbling blocks, the road to power is very smooth, except that they have encountered a bottleneck in the competition for Hokage. Danzo's fingers kept tapping the armrest of the chair lightly, making a thumping sound. In fact, he had already thought about what to say next. But he will pretend to think about how to deal with it, and let his subordinates fall into inner entanglements, waiting anxiously for his release. In this way, if he imposes punishment, his subordinates will be more afraid. If he does not deal with it, his subordinates will be grateful. Danzo's two subordinates are facing an abyss at this time, and it seems that even if Uchiha Kiyoshi keeps using illusions, it will be a little happier than this. I'm sorry that this is the first time you two made a mistake, so I don't care about it. But if one thing is not done, another one must be used to make up for it. In a few days, I have another thing that needs to be done. Cold sweat stayed on the foreheads of the two men for a long time, and finally slipped down, saying respectfully, "Yes, Danzo-sama." Danzo bowed his head in thought. The sudden rise of Uchiha Kiyoshi, a boy he had never heard of before, made him completely unexpected. Before I only knew that I could use the fairy mode, but now I have Sharingan that can use advanced illusions. The strange thing is that Sun Zan often hinders my monitoring of him. From this point of view, I am afraid that he will stand on my side sooner or later. Opposite. A week later, Uchiha Fugaku informed Uchiha Kiyoshi that the young clansman Uchiha Yingcho who had Sharingan had been discharged from the hospital and was immediately assigned a task. Uchiha Fugaku has already informed Uchiha Hideaki in advance, asking him to meet with him for the reason of organizing his belongings in the Wei nationality before departure after accepting the mission. Uchiha Hideaki came out from the mission entrustment office, and rushed to his house according to the agreement with the patriarch. In the backyard, besides the patriarch he had always respected, he also saw a young man about his age. Uchiha Fugaku handed over the basic information of Uchiha Hideaki to Uchiha Kiyoshi. The paper not only records his basic personal information, but also includes various details such as combat habits and daily behavior habits. Understand this so that Uchiha Kiyoshi can make a perfect camouflage as much as possible, and will not be discovered until he actively tears off the mask. A 13-year-old, Chunin, with one shovel in the left eye and two shovels in the right eye. He is right-handed. When he is nervous, he will subconsciously put his palms close to his thighs. When talking with younger female ninjas who are older than himself, he will blush and shy. Speed becomes faster. Uchiha Kiyoshi absorbs information with a high degree of concentration, and at the same time simulates in his mind how to adjust his movements and expressions when encountering various situations that may occur, in order to behave most like Uchiha Hideaki himself. According to the opinions provided by Uzumaki Mito, using some special methods, he can even regulate his endocrine and hormone levels, so that he can blush whenever he wants. Uchiha Hideki looked from afar and blurted out, "Senior Ching." Uchiha Kiyoshi was stunned for a moment, turned his head and said to this peer, It's not impossible, I can't be considered a senior at my age. Uchiha Hideki ran over and said solemnly. When I was in the hospital, all I heard were legends about the predecessors tearing up the enemy with their hands. Some people really believe this rumor. The sturdy Union is not a soft piece of bread, which can be torn by hand. Uchiha Kiyoshi said modestly. That's not the case. Apart from punching the enemy to the ground and singled out the Abduo, there is nothing to brag about. Uchiha Fugaku said seriously. Yingcho, until Ching comes back to meet with you, you stay at the place I arranged for you and don't go anywhere, you understand? Uchiha Hideki nodded. Clear. Before going to the Wei nationality, he had already bought the first and second volumes of One Piece on the way, just for entertainment during this period of staying at home. Kiyoshi Uchiha said. I'm almost familiar with Yingcho's habits, so I can go. He formed seals with both hands and used the transformation technique to become Uchiha Hideaki. Height, figure, hair length, etc. are exactly the same. Uchiha Hideaki seemed to be looking at his shadow clone. Senior Ching, the agreed starting point is training ground no. Uchiha Hideki said. Although this person respects himself very much, Uchiha Kiyoshi is very uncomfortable with this name. We are about the same age, don't call me senior, just call me Ching. Okay, Senior Ching. A familiar conversation. Uchiha Kiyoshi hesitated to speak. He moved his body, adjusted his movement habits, and immediately walked towards Konoha's no training ground. According to what Uchiha Yingcho said, this mission is a group of 3. Go to the southeast of Konoha with the other 2 Chunin arranged by the superior, and set an ambush trap at a designated location near the coast. It is used to defend against the Kurigakure ninjas who come across the sea and land in battle. Before departure, Uchiha Yingcho also gave him the seal scroll that stored the trap props. Teams of 3 are the norm for smaller assignments. Arrangement tasks often mean that the probability of a battle breaking out is low. For most of these tasks, the executors will come and go safely. Therefore, there are no special requirements for the configuration of the team members. Basically, it is to find idle ninjas, plug and play. It is normal for the 3 team members to not know each other before carrying out the task. But this is only a theoretical premise. It is such a premise that it is convenient for Danzo to arrange for his men to go and partner with the Uchiha people who have Sharingan. Early in the morning, Uchiha was mentally prepared to guard against his 2 strange teammates. The question is, how many of these 2 people are Danzo's subordinates? Chapter 61. On the Konoha training ground, the grass was green, and Uchiha Kiyoshi saw 2 figures under a big tree, which were the teammates of the mission that Uchiha Hideaki said. He imitated Uchiha Hideaki's simple and honest tone, and shouted. Here I am. Sorry for the long wait. It's okay, we packed up, we just arrived. The 2 who turned to face each other showed kind smiles. They had a gentle temperament and looked very easy to deal with. They were like the kind of people who couldn't help but vote for him in class elections. It's just that according to Uchiha Kiyoshi's experience, this smile has too many technical camouflage elements, and it can't see its own character. He has to meet many people in a day in the restaurant. Some customers are straight-hearted, expressing their joy and anger. Some customers are thoughtful and good at politeness and relationship management. Real and fake smiles can be seen at a glance. But this is only an empirical guess, and cannot be used as a rigid basis for making a judgment. But then, Uchiha Kiyoshi approached, observed carefully, and after seeing the identities of the 2 of them, he couldn't help laughing to himself. The 2 of them are about 20 years old, of medium build and ordinary appearance. One of them has a black mole the size of a grain of rice on his neck, and the other has a bumpy scar on his ear, which seems to have been corroded by acid. These are the 2 subordinates of Danzo who he drove out of the restaurant with his own hands a week ago. Compared with that day, I just changed my attire. I am afraid of a clever word in everything. I originally thought that it would take more work and more brains to consider the details before I can determine who has evil intentions. This is just the beginning, and the situation is already clear. Uchiha Kiyoshi also had to admit that the luck of these two people was really not very good, and they were caught by him twice in a row. Uchiha Hideaki's character was a little shy, so Uchiha Kiyoshi imitated him, lowered his head slightly, put one hand on his head, and said a little reluctantly. Seniors, I don't have enough experience in this task, so please give me some guidance. One of them replied. It's okay. This task is very simple, it's only sea level, and generally you won't encounter enemies. Even if we do, we'll run away. Another replied. Hee. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled and said nothing. Then they introduced themselves. The one with the mole on his neck is called Yoshi Takuya, and the one with the scar on his ear is Jun Hasagawa. They all stated that they are Chunin, and did not reveal any special information points other than that. The image shown temporarily is that of a warm-hearted and friendly senior. After exchanging a few simple greetings, the three of them hurried towards the southeast. Along the way, Yoshi Takuya talked to Uchiha Kiyoshi every 10 minutes. Even if Uchiha Kiyoshi was clumsy and not good at coping, he could always pull out a few paragraphs from irrelevant places to continue the topic. Occasionally deliberately tell a joking lie, Uchiha Kiyoshi will deliberately pretend not to hear it, and investigate it very seriously. When it was revealed at the end that it was a joke, he remained silent in embarrassment. Yoshi Takuya thought to himself. This kid seems introverted and not good at speaking. He is young and inexperienced. He has a simple mind. He believes everything I say. It shouldn't be difficult to complete the task assigned by Danzo. On the road for several hours, Yoshi Takuya was still using some innocuous words to maintain the atmosphere of chatting. From food and play in Konoha to food and play in other countries, mention them all. After all these were finished, Yoshi Takuya said again. Yingcho, do you usually have any hobbies? If we have the same hobbies, we can play together in the future. So many embarrassing topics made Kiyoshi Uchiha a little annoyed. He thought for a while and replied. I don't have any special hobbies. Some of my classmates can play musical instruments, and some can draw. I feel very good. I am very ordinary, and I am interested in delicious food. By the way, like the chocolate sundae in Wadao restaurant, I have a drink every day. Flower restaurant. When Yoshi Takuya and Hasagawa Jun heard these words, it was as if they had post-traumatic stress disorder, their bodies ached, and their voices trembled a little. That boss is really ruthless. But in order to let the topic go on normally, Yoshi Takuya still tried his best to keep his tone calm. Yes, the food at Wadao restaurant is really delicious, and the price is also affordable. Hasagawa Jun also echoed. On the way, we can only eat dry food. Let's go to Wadao restaurant for dinner after we get back. My treat. Uchiha Kiyoshi said in a curious tone. Brother Zui, Brother Run, why are your voices trembling? Yoshi Takuya was also taken aback for a moment, and said. Is there? It may be that we are moving very fast, and the sound is mixed with the effect of the wind. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled disdainfully. It seems that the illusion that day really brought a lot of psychological shadow to the two of them. It is also difficult to install. He continued on the topic of flower restaurant. Well, I think the boss is very nice, and he often organizes discounts and giveaways, you know that, right? Crazy Wednesday dessert discounts and the like. Yoshi Takuya's mouth twitched. The boss is very nice, really nice. He turned his head and pretended to look at the road, and said. Yes, I am a regular customer, and the boss is really generous. It took Yoshi Takuya half a lifetime of determination to say this against his will. Jun Hasagawa couldn't help but said. When the customer needs it, he will give the customer special care. Yoshi Takuya immediately gave Jun Hasagawa a quick look. It means that such complaints with personal emotions should not be spoken out. Uchiha Kiyoshi pretended not to understand and asked. What kind of care? Jun Hasagawa patted his head angrily, regretting that he had spoken too quickly. He recalled the scene of that day, he hesitated and said. He will personally come to ask customers if the food is good. He wasn't lying. Uchiha Kiyoshi did use illusion on them after asking this sentence. Kiyoshi Uchiha nodded with an, "Oh," and then had an in-depth and comprehensive exchange on the bookshelves of Hinata Restaurant, whether they are practical or not, and how the staff's service attitude is. Yoshi Takuya could only keep talking along this topic. He kept a smile on his face all the time, but secretly cursed in his heart. I have hinted many times not to continue talking about Wadao Restaurant. Why does this kid not open any pot and carry any pot? Uchiha Kiyoshi was not worried that the two of them would doubt his identity because he chatted too much about Hinata Restaurant. Psychologically, pretenders try to avoid talking about who they really are. The more he talked, the harder it was for Danzo's two men to think in the true direction. Half an hour later, under Kiyoshi Uchiha's intense torture, Takuya Yoshi and Jun Hasagawa finally kept silent and hurried on their way quietly. Chapter 62 The Art of Hidden Mist. The time spent on the road passed silently under your feet. At night, I lighted a fire in the wild and rested, and continued on my way during the day, and I soon arrived at the designated mission location before I knew it. The loophole of this mission is that the three of them cooperate to arrange the traps, but only the captain knows the exact location of the traps. It was originally intended to reduce the chance of leaking information. It is more reliable for one person to carry information than three people to carry information. The intention was correct, but it gave Danzo an opportunity to take advantage of it. Therefore, Yoshitaku can also take Uchiha Kiyoshi to any position with reasonable reasons. In the early morning, the fog filled the air. Uchiha Kiyoshi yawned. One of the reasons he doesn't like going out on missions is that he can't sleep well when he's out in the wild. The foggy weather obscured the vision, and I could only know a general direction. Uchiha Kiyoshi knew what the other two were thinking. In this kind of weather, if the people on the other side of Kurigakure suddenly activated the technique of Kurigakure, it may be difficult for a ninja who cannot perceive ninjutsu to react immediately. The water vapor is like a heavy veil, making everything faintly visible. The humidity of the sea breeze is high, and the water vapor density in the air near the sea is high, so it is quite normal to be shrouded in thick fog. If the natural fog and the man-made fog concealment technique are superimposed, even if it is Sharingan, it will be difficult to distinguish the enemy's position. Just like when Kakashi and Zabuza were fighting, even if Sharingan was turned on, he had to rely on his psychic dog to lock Zabuza's position. Without special means of perception, the Kurigakure assassination force is very difficult to deal with. Uchiha Kiyoshi asked tentatively. Brother Zui, the fog is so thick, why don't we take a rest first, and wait for the fog to clear? I can hardly see the direction. Yoshi Takuya sneered inwardly. He just needs this foggy day to save him a lot of unnecessary trouble. Don't worry, I'm a perception-type ninja, and I have a clear grasp of the direction. Just follow me closely. Don't worry too much. The fighter plane cannot be delayed. It is better for us to complete the mission early. No wonder, it turned out that he could perceive ninjutsu, so he arranged it like this. I'm afraid that Danzo had known for a long time that there might be a base of Kurigakure's assassination force nearby, so he asked his subordinates to bring him here. If Yoshi Takuya and Hasagawa-jun were unlucky, went deep into the enemy's territory, and went around for a long time without encountering Kurigakure's assassination force, then they might have to strike early. As for the fog that arises naturally, although it is not necessary, it is also what they look forward to. Uchiha nodded and replied, well, then I'm relieved. That being the case, things might move a little faster. Before the just right fog clears, Danzo's two subordinates should seize this rare opportunity. When talking with the two of them casually, Uchiha Kiyoshi first turned on the immortal mode with the help of Senjujuma to improve his own perception. Then Uzumaki Mito seamlessly connected, applying the Uzumaki clan's special spell on him, hiding the chakra breath, and covering the fairy texture on his face. Long ago, Uzumaki Mito had already completed the arrangement of the spell on Uchiha Kiyoshi, and at this time he only activated it with chakra, and the technique was skillful and fast. So close at hand, Yoshi Takuya, a perception ninja who is not unfamiliar with perception ability, did not notice the change of chakra breath on Uchiha Kiyoshi at all. I don't know when it started, Uchiha Kiyoshi found that Yoshi Takuya's words gradually decreased. Maybe he has already put his mind on the calculation. After walking in the thick fog for a long time, Yoshi Takuya seemed not to be close to the place where the trap was set up, and he didn't mean to slow down and stop at all. Hasegawa-jun also pretended that everything was normal, but he was just on his way. The two of them, like skilled catchers, guided Uchiha Kiyoshi, the prey, towards the direction of the trap step by step. The sun rises slowly. As time progresses, it stands to reason that the concentration of fog should gradually decrease. But Uchiha Kiyoshi's vision became more and more blurred. The density of the fog gradually increased, even becoming abnormally thick. Within the range of Uchiha Kiyoshi's perception, several strange chakra breaths appeared, moving quietly and cautiously towards their direction. After a while, Uchiha Kiyoshi could also feel the breath of Mizuden chakra in the thick fog. There is no doubt that this is the technique of Wuin assassination commonly used by Wuin assassination troops. Use chakra to create dense fog, and put the target in a white and misty environment, so that it is easy to hide yourself and launch a surprise attack that is difficult to guard against. The concentration of the fog also changes due to the amount of chakra. High-level assassins can also use the fog to quickly approach the target with the help of fog. As Uchiha Kiyoshi expected, Yoshi Takuya, who was a perceiving ninja, did not inform him of the enemy's movements. "Brother Zui, why is the fog getting bigger and bigger? Isn't it a little abnormal?" Uchiha Kiyoshi asked again. "It's okay. Our location is close to the seaside. Thick fog is normal imagination, don't worry." Yoshi Takuya whispered. The tone became lighter and lighter, revealing perfunctory, completely lacking the kind and patient attitude before. "Well, Takuya," Uchiha Kiyoshi responded. Yoshitaku also didn't notice that Uchiha Kiyoshi's name for him had also changed. The people on Kurigaka's side were getting closer and closer. Uchiha Kiyoshi squinted his eyes, and under the cover of the fog, the figures of Yoshi Takuya and Hasegawa-jun were a little unclear, and they seemed to be about to leave his field of vision. They were deliberately throwing him off. "Don't fall behind, Yingcho." After Yoshi Takuya finished speaking, he and Jun Hasegawa suddenly increased their speed and changed their direction of movement. It disappeared in Uchiha Kiyoshi's eyes. The two finally couldn't bear to act. Although the eyes are white and the eyes have almost lost the ability to capture information, but the spiritual perception allows Uchiha Kiyoshi to always firmly control the positions of the two of them. No matter how they ran, Uchiha Kiyoshi always kept a relatively close distance with them. Yoshitaku also felt very strange. The information clearly shows that this person does not know any sensory ninjutsu. Why is it possible to determine their location from such a distance and follow them all the time? But soon he didn't worry about it anymore, because Kurigaka's people were coming soon. In Uchiha Kiyoshi's perception, there are a total of 3 strange chakra breaths, which are getting closer to him. When the distance was only about tens of meters, the Kirin who was holding his breath and approaching a little bit suddenly accelerated and rushed towards Uchiha Kiyoshi. Uchiha Kiyoshi heard the sound of the chain shaking, and felt that one person stopped nearby, and the other 2 were about to come to him. He focused on strengthening his perception, grabbed the flying chain, and pulled it with all his might. The Kirin on the other side of the chain felt a huge force, was pulled off the ground unexpectedly, and flew in the direction of Uchiha Kiyoshi. Chapter 63 The True Hunter. Kiyoshi Uchiha wrapped the chain around his hands, and reconfirmed the positions of the other 2 mist ninjas, just like a baseball player locks a baseball. He pulled obliquely, and the mist ninja who was pulled away by him was dragged by the strange force and forcibly changed the flight trajectory. Just happened to collide with his teammates solidly. A fast-moving hidden weapon weighing more than 100 kilograms is enough to cause a huge impact. The eyes of the 2 Wanin suddenly went dark, and they fell into a coma. "Mito, hide my chakra breath further, like a dead person," Uchiha Kiyoshi informed Uzumaki Mito through consciousness. After a person dies, his chakra breath dissipates. Sensing ninjas often judge that a person is dead based on the change of chakra breath from existence to non-existence. In the current situation, when Danzo's subordinates can't perceive his chakra breath, they will take the next step. Generally, ninjas don't have too much nostalgia for corpses. Carrying corpses to move is a way to ensure that the scene is safe, and the same is true for Mist Ninja. Uchiha Kiyoshi formed seals with both hands, and used the earth to summon several sharp spear-like ground thorns from the ground. The only remaining Kirito ninja noticed the movement under his feet, immediately stopped approaching Uchiha Kiyoshi, turned around and fled decisively. The fact that his two teammates were dealt with so quickly showed that there was a huge gap in strength between his side and his opponent, and he couldn't stay here for long. There was a chaotic sound of earth and rock rolling on the ground. Under the deliberate control of Uchiha Kiyoshi, the ground thorns blocked the action path of Mist Ninja one after the other. Wu Ninja froze in panic. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he would have been pierced through his body from bottom to top by one of these two ground nails. The water vapor condensed into a blade in Uchiha Kiyoshi's palm. Kiyoshi Uchiha put his finger through the round hole in Mizukunai's handle, danced in a circle, and then threw it with a flick of his wrist. The water was so bitter that it was stained with blood, and it scattered into a stream of water, and the body of Karinin also fell to the ground, soaked in a pool of blood, and lost his breath. Uchiha Kiyoshi completely concealed his aura. Walking to the side of the other two unconscious Onin, each of them cleanly hit the neck to complete the last knife. After solving Mist Ninja, Uchiha Kiyoshi stood quietly, waiting for Danzo's subordinates to come to the door. In just a few tens of seconds, Yoshi Takuya also found that the chakra breath of the four people he was paying attention to could not be sensed. Without any long-distance movement, it just disappeared in place. He whispered to Jun Hasegawa. That kid named Yingcho seems to have had a fierce fight with Kurigakure's people. He and the breath of the three Kurigakures disappeared one after another. It seems that they are all dead. According to the order in which the breaths disappeared, he imagined a possible situation. Uchiha Hideaki first killed one by relying on his personal strength under the blessing of Sharingan, and then was defeated by Wu Ninja together. Before dying, he dragged two more to death by relying on special fighting methods. It happened that there was not one left. Jun Hasegawa replied, "Isn't that just right? There are no troublemakers, we just need to recover the corpses. If there are one or two Kurigakure people who are not dead, we need to do more. If they are not dead, they either need to kill the remaining people and take away the target's corpse, or they have to wash away the target's corpse with water escape, keeping it out of the sight of Mist Shinobi, and then carry it." Yoshi Takuya nodded. The two of them returned to the normal state of communication at this time. Their voices and expressions were cold, and they were not as friendly as they were when they pretended to be before. Even without wearing the mask of the root organization, when facing human life, the indifference shown on the face is no different from the beast depicted on the mask. Yoshi Takuya and Hasegawa Jun came to the location where Uchiha Kiyoshi was before according to memory. They lowered their bodies slightly, facing the ground and searching carefully. One corpse, two corpses, three corpses. These three corpses have Kurigakure's flowing water patterns on their foreheads, not the Konoha forehead guards they are familiar with. They turned around and couldn't find the fourth body. It was also the corpse they wanted to see the most after planning for so long. Round and round, nothing. As time passed slowly, fear and uneasiness grew in the hearts of Yoshi Takuya and Hasegawa Jun like rapidly expanding tumors. If not here, where is the body? It was not a big deal that the body was not found for a while because of the thick fog blocking the sight. What if, in fact, the person is not dead, and there is no fourth corpse they want? Are you looking for me? Uchiha Kiyoshi quietly came behind the two of them and put his hands on their shoulders. Same action, similar mood. Just like the last time I was in a restaurant and asked the two of them if they had paid for the meal. Both of them felt their hearts tremble in an instant, and their pupils shrank sharply. The least expected situation happened. Without any perception, Uchiha Kiyoshi's sudden words were like whispers of ghosts. Yoshi Takuya was completely confused about the status quo. This is how the same thing. Why is the distance so close, even with physical contact? He, a sensory ninja, still can't detect the other party's chakra breath at all. Stronger than doubt, however, is fear. Since the opponent is stronger than expected, how to deal with it is the first thing to consider. Yoshi Takuya's first reaction was that even if the target is not dead, they still have a chance in 2-on-1. Just as he was about to turn around and distance himself, he found that Uchiha Kiyoshi's hand was as heavy as 1,000 weights, firmly clasping his shoulder, unable to move at all. Yoshi Takuya was completely flustered, and he glanced at his teammate Hasegawa-jun beside him. The situation was exactly the same as his, exactly the same overwhelmed. Yoshi Takuya forcibly steadied his mind, quickly pulled out kunai from the package around his legs, and was about to stab Uchiha Kiyoshi forcibly. "Don't move," Uchiha Kiyoshi said in a calm tone. With a little force on his hands, he directly pressed Danzo's two subordinates to the ground. The kunai in Yoshi Takuya's hand fell to the ground before he lifted it up, making a clear sound. Now his shoulder is in pain, and he is not willing to let others slaughter him. Cough, cough. Uchiha cleared his throat, restored his normal tone, and at the same time lifted the transformation technique and removed the disguise. "Aren't you too tired of pretending like this all the time?" "I'm a little tired. I always wear a mask to be a human being. The mask is embedded in the flesh and I can't take it off." When Yoshi Takuya and Hasegawa-jun heard these words for the first time, their faces were ashen. Very familiar tone and timbre, I have dealt with him before. They have calculated thousands of times, but they can't figure out that the target they are staring at is actually disguised by Uchiha Kiyoshi, the owner of Hinata Restaurant. The first mission escaped in embarrassment because of him, so he was sent here by Danzong. But the second time, it was him again. Is this man the devil? Don't think about committing suicide, your lives don't belong to you anymore. Uchiha Kiyoshi quickly formed a black spell in the palm of his hand, which spread to the two people's bodies, locking all their movements. Prevent them from using any special means to kill themselves directly. Chapter 64. Uchiha Kiyoshi thought about it, and loosened some spells to give them the ability to speak, which is convenient for torture. There are two people in total. Uchiha Kiyoshi only loosened Yoshi Takuya's sealing technique. If something happens, at least one can stay. The black art retreated a little from Yoshi Takuya's mouth. Yoshi Taku also found that his tongue and mouth muscles regained some strength, and he could open his mouth to speak. He did not have the fearless courage to kill himself immediately, nor did he have the firm belief to give him the motivation beyond his own courage. Joining the root organization is just looking for a job to earn a living, and there is no need to work hard. Moreover, such a difficult method of suicide by biting one's tongue is not so easy to achieve in one step. It takes some luck and skill, and the death can be painful. As far as the treatment given by Danzo is concerned, Yoshi Taku also feels that it is not worth giving up his precious life. Working for Danzo. It's just a forced job. But if there is room for struggle, you still have to try. Boss Ching, why did you appear here? Where is my teammate Yingcho? Yoshi Takuya put half of his face on the ground, getting close to the soil, barely squeezed out a smile, and said to Uchiha Kiyoshi in a very polite tone. He doesn't understand the cause and effect at all, but based on the current situation, he can guess a lot. They were doing dishonorable things, and they were caught at this critical moment. It's like a pickpocket being picked up by plainclothes police on the bus to chat, it can't be a coincidence. But Yoshi Takuya still held his final fantasy and wanted to continue pretending. Still pretending, how can you be as virtuous as your boss? Uchiha Kiyoshi stepped on Yoshi Takuya's back and said coldly. If I were Hideaki Uchiha, you probably wouldn't be so polite now. That child is indeed very simple and pitiful. He had already suffered a lot when he got Sharingan, but now he is still being punished by you. I'm watching. If I don't come out to help him, who will come? Yoshi Takuya's smirk froze, and Uchiha Kiyoshi's words indicated that he had known the intentions of the two of them a long time ago, which was equivalent to a conclusion, and it was meaningless to cover up. The two of us are just here for the first time. Yoshi Takuya also changed the subject, trying to excuse himself from the other side, but when he was halfway through speaking, his whole body was instantly paralyzed, and he was completely speechless. Uchiha Kiyoshi remembered the matter of the seal of the root of tongue trouble, reached out to lift Yoshi Takuya, and pinched his cheeks. After Yoshi Takuya recovered from the feeling of paralysis, he stuck out his tongue very cooperatively, showing Uchiha Kiyoshi the seal of tongue disaster. It's not that I don't want to say it, it's just that I can't say it. Uchiha Kiyoshi firmly grasped Yoshi Takuya's head with his fingers. Yoshi Taku also made a sound in pain. Uchiha Kiyoshi's chakra gushed out from the acupuncture points in his hand and came to Yoshi Takuya's tongue. Chakra shunts in parallel, and after standing at several points, they work at the same time, like disassembling parts, deconstructing the seal of tongue disaster and eliminating the power of chakra above. Yoshi Takuya closed his eyes, and there was a burning sensation on his tongue, which reminded him of the feeling of being cursed by Danzo. After successful deconstruction, Uchiha Kiyoshi broke up the chakra of the magic formula arranged by Danzo, and the black rune of the seal of tongue disaster gradually disappeared. Soon, Yoshi Takuya's tongue became like an ordinary person. Uchiha Kiyoshi let go of his hand and said, "What do you want to say?" Yoshi Takuya blinked in a daze, and said tentatively, "Danzo-sama has a bandage on his right eye." A sentence about Danzo can be said completely without the slightest hindrance, which shows that the seal of tongue disaster has indeed lost its effect. Yoshi Takuya was also very surprised, and felt a sense of relief for an instant. Uchiha Kiyoshi's ability is even more unfathomable than he imagined. Uchiha Kiyoshi got a message from his unintentional words just now. Danzo has already transplanted Sharingan at this time. Otherwise, why put a bandage over the right eye to hide it? This is also consistent with the information in his memory. When running for the fourth Hokage, Danzo's image was already wrapped with a bandage on his right eye. Now that the war is coming to an end, it is not far from Namikaze Minato becoming the fourth Hokage. Kiyoshi Uchiha didn't really care about this. Even if he gave Danzo 10 lives, he wouldn't really be able to pierce Susanoo with kunai. Yoshi Takuya swallowed his saliva and glanced at his teammates who were still unable to move on the ground. He couldn't think of things too far away, he only knew that if he didn't behave well now, he wouldn't live in the future at all. Ninja is originally a profession that often does local optimal solutions. Yoshi Takuya said cautiously, "My teammates and I are here for the first time to perform." He paused, looking at Kiyoshi Uchiha very nervously. Perform the task of recovering Sharingan. Yoshi Takuya wanted to use the first-time statement to reduce Uchiha Kiyoshi's hostility and increase the probability of stock. Kiyoshi Uchiha frowned. Danzo is not a fool, is he? Let inexperienced rookies do this. If you don't want to answer properly, let your teammates do it. Uchiha Kiyoshi raised his hand and placed it in front of Yoshi Takuya's neck. The water droplets quickly gathered in his hand, forming the shape of a short blade. When starting to shape the tip of the knife, the bead of water stopped moving. Cold sweat broke out from Yoshi Takuya's forehead, and the skin on the surface of his neck felt the coolness and sharpness of the water blade at the same time. As soon as the point of the knife was fully formed, his windpipe would be cut open and he would die of asphyxiation. Yoshi Takuya quickly said, "Whatever you want to ask, just say it." He closed his eyes tightly, not daring to look at Uchiha Kiyoshi's expression. Uchiha said in a low voice, "Where is Danzo's usual base?" Yoshi Takuya opened his eyes abruptly. Danzo's location. He understood that it turned out that Uchiha Ching was targeting Danzo from beginning to end. Yoshi Takuya said tremblingly, "Danzo-sama usually has 3 to 4 places where he often stays, and he doesn't stay in a certain fixed place for a long time. I just accept tasks in one of the strongholds, and I don't know about the others." Kiyoshi Uchiha said, "But if you complete the task, when you go back to report, you will definitely see Danzo, right?" Takuya Yoshi heard more and more something was wrong. This means that it sounds like Uchiha Kiyoshi is going to point directly at Danzo's people. No. That's right. Yoshi Takuo could also imagine how things would develop after he gave this answer. But the sky is falling and he can survive for a while. Uzumaki Mito reminded through consciousness. Ching, this location is too close to Kurigaku's stronghold, so it's not suitable for staying for a long time. If you kill their people, they should find out quickly and come back. Let's find a hidden place to stay first. Quote. Although not afraid of fighting, the focus is not on fighting now. It is good. Uchiha Kiyoshi took out a blank scroll and a pen from the package. Under the control of Uzumaki Mito, he quickly wrote complex and regular spells on the blank scroll. Soon, the originally clean scroll was filled with spells. The font is strong, eloquent but rigorous. Uchiha Kiyoshi couldn't understand it, but he thought it was very powerful. Chapter 65. Uzumaki Mito explained. Storage scrolls were originally used to store dead objects such as ninja tools. I added some suitable changes, and they can also be used to store living people. It also guarantees that they will still be alive when you take them out of the scroll. Quote. Fresh. Uchiha Kiyoshi felt that Uzumaki Mito's attitude when he said this was like treating ingredients. With this method, large sea beasts and the like can be stored in scrolls and brought back easily. But if you think about it carefully, it is more convenient to fly the Thunder God technique. If it weren't for the big employees who couldn't go out, Uchiha would have summoned Senju Tomonama early in the morning to deliver food. Flying Thunder God takes out food, and guarantees that when it arrives at the destination, the food is still fresh from the pan, and it may still be a little hot. Uchiha Kiyoshi placed the storage scroll on the ground, stunned Yoshi Takuya and Hasegawa-jun, tied them together and placed them in the center of the technique. Chakra was injected again, and a puff of smoke rose above the scroll, and the two disappeared in their original positions and were stored in the scroll. Uchiha Kiyoshi conjectured that the principle of this scroll is probably the same as Obito's Kamui, opening up a different space and then putting things in it. After putting away the scroll, Uchiha Kiyoshi turned and headed north, heading back to Konoha. On the day Uchiha Kiyoshi returned to Konoha, Hinata restaurant closed early again. Customers have long been accustomed to it, and they don't need to read the notice in front of the door to know the reason written on it. Uchiha Itachi stood in frustration at the door of Hinata restaurant, wondering if something went wrong, and said to himself. In order to buy desserts, I finished my father's training tasks ahead of time, but why do I have to decorate the interior today? Regular customers of Wadao restaurant often joked. It's not the restaurant that's being decorated, it's the owner's mood. In the Wadao restaurant, Uchiha Kiyoshi put the storage scroll on the table. A small table, surrounded by Uzumaki Mito, and Uchiha Madara among senjuju. Kyuubi would put his tail back when he saw it, and be cautious in his words and deeds. Hatake Sakumo has long been used to this kind of situation, and he usually can't get in the way. He just put a few cold dishes on the table to make the scene look less serious. Then hid aside and looked at the newspapers and novels Kiyoshi Uchiha bought from outside. If you have nothing to do, you can sneak up to the second floor to see the unpublished manuscripts of Kiyoshi Uchiha. In his spare time, he also picks up a pen and thinks about what he can write based on his own experience. Such as, don't let your child lose at the starting line. How to make your child become a chunin at the age of 6. Hatake Sakumo went to the second floor to get a pen and paper. When he passed by the table, he found that except Kiyoshi Uchiha, the expressions of the other 3 seniors were very serious. Unlike the previous process, Uchiha Madara first said, I haven't spoken, but Hashirama, Mito, you have also seen through Ching's vision, this is how the Uchiha family is treated by your descendants. Uzumaki Mito felt for the first time that he felt wronged in front of Uchiha Madara, and remained silent. Senjujuma frowned. During the Battle of the Valley of the End, although he had the determination to kill his best friend, he still regarded the rest of the Uchiha family as part of Konoha. His affection for Uchiha Madara has never changed, and also for the Uchiha family. Madara, I'm sorry for you, Danzo is my brother's disciple, what he did. I also need to take responsibility. Uchiha Madara snorted. He still didn't understand why Senju Bashima could put down his posture so naturally to apologize. He is obviously the strongest, but he bows and apologizes at every turn. Aside from apologizing, is there anything else you can do? Uchiha Madara said in a nonchalant tone. Even though he said that, he found that when he saw Senjuzuma bowing his head and sincerely apologizing, his mood quickly calmed down. Uchiha Madara suddenly felt disgusted with his natural emotional changes. Why calm down, your pent-up anger? But Uchiha Madara remembered that he also accepted Senju Bashirama's sincerity on the battlefield, and then led the tribe to cooperate with the Senju clan. So this is not the first time Senjujuma's apology really worked. Uzumaki Mito sighed helplessly, and said, "To be honest, I don't want to become a mortal enemy with the Uchiha clan. The current situation is not what I want." The more he listened to this kind of words, the more lonely and chilling Uchiha Madara felt. You all say this, but if Kiyoshi Uchiha doesn't interfere, the fate of the Uchiha family can be seen at a glance. Uchiha Kiyoshi interrupted what they were talking about now. I'm just showing you the hidden content. As for how to face it and how to understand it, it's up to the three seniors. Solve some problems first, and things will be much simpler. Uchiha Kiyoshi pressed the scroll. Danzo should soon discover the disappearance of his subordinates, but he will not immediately suspect him. Uchiha Kiyoshi will not delay the matter for too long. When Danzo realizes that something is wrong, he should meet with Danzo. Only one side, and the last side. Danzo's stronghold information can be known through Danzo's subordinates. Relying on pretending to be Danzo's subordinates, approaching Danzo at close range. According to the original plan, he needs to use the Flying Thunder God art in the Thousand Hands to prevent Danzo from escaping. Also summoned the ninja of the Hyuga family, and asked Hyuga Hyuzu to go to the Hokage building to ask for an explanation. Uchiha Kiyoshi stood up and walked towards the shrine. It's time to call again. On the other hand, only Senju Tomona understands the political issues of the Konoha family, and many issues are directly related to him. The three generations of Hokage, Danzo, and the two Hokage consultants are all his students. Uchiha Kiyoshi came to the shrine and faced the statue of Guan Eri. He scratched his head, and suddenly felt that the image of Guan Eri was a little tired. Or order a sculpture of Sauron in the state of three swords in the future. Very fresh and handsome. But in this way, there will be no ancient and sacred atmosphere. Then Empress Hancock. As long as it looks good, other considerations can be left behind. After thinking wildly for a while, Kiyoshi Uchiha came back to his senses, injected his consciousness into the shrine, and said silently. Between thousand hands. The light flickered, and the system responded. The soul in the thousand-handed door has been detected, and your current wish power is 3,580, which meets the summoning conditions. Do you want to summon it? Close black lens bracket. At present, there are more and more employees in the restaurant, and more wishes are provided every day. Kiyoshi Uchiha hardly needs to worry about running out of wishes. You only have to worry about the small restaurant not being able to accommodate so many people. You can't let Uchiha Madara and Senjuju live in the same house. Uchiha Kiyoshi quickly confirmed the summoning order. A blazing white light came on and then dimmed. The eyes of the three people on the table were all attracted. Silver hair and red pupils, with a face shield style iron forehead on the face, wearing a blue stacked hanger. Hyansho Phagian slowly opened his eyes, exuding a restrained and deep temperament from all over his body. Hyansho Zujian couldn't help laughing. This is his biological brother who followed him all his life. Uchiha Madara gritted his teeth, showing hatred. This is the murderer who killed his younger brother Kwana. Why does eating the wrong food cause headaches? Chapter 66. Uchiha Kiyoshi doesn't need to look back now, and knows that Uchiha Madara's face is very ugly. If it weren't for him suppressing Uchiha Madara's strength now, I'm afraid Uchiha Madara would not be able to help but instantly open the full body and slash up. Uchiha Ching turned his head and said earnestly. I'm an honest man, I won't lie to you. The younger brothers in Zujian are here, and your younger brother is coming soon. Uchiha Madara thought to himself. Even if you lie to me, what can I do? He was dissatisfied. Obviously I was the one who came first. Why is it the younger brother of Hashirama who was resurrected first? It means that I have been working longer than Senjujuma. Based on the number of years of service, I should have revived my younger brother first. Uchiha was stunned for a moment, as if that was indeed the case. But as a boss, the most essential skill is to make cakes for employees to satisfy their hunger. A famous entrepreneur said, 996 is a blessing. Uchiha cleared his throat, and said seriously. You can't think so. Listen to my point of view. Although your length of service is ahead of Zujian, you can't compare with him in terms of performance. Zujian's work attitude and service quality are well received by customers. On the other hand, Uchiha Madara, except for a small number of customers with M tendencies who will give good reviews, most of the customers said that just seeing him, they are so scared that they can't hold their chopsticks steadily. Uchiha Madara had a complex expression. Although he wanted to refute, he couldn't find any reason. How could he imagine that he and Qian Shuju had fought for a lifetime, and now they had to compete in the quality of service as a waiter? Uchiha Kiyoshi continued. Besides, because you come first, Hashirama comes later. Therefore, Kwana will be behind Togama. What about Uzumaki Mito? She's also from Hashirama. You didn't tell me your wife's name. Uchiha Kiyoshi spread his hands helplessly. Who is Uchiha Madara's wife is an unsolved mystery. It is not even confirmed whether Uchiha Madara has a wife. As we all know, there are many brothers in the Uchiha family who control brothers, but not many people really like women. Several representatives. As soon as Uchiha Kiyoshi finished speaking, everyone except Senshubajian, who was confused, looked at Uchiha Madara curiously. Senju Zuma even grabbed a handful of peanuts and put them in his palm, curious to see what Uchiha Madara would say. Uchiha Madara gave a tisk impatiently, and turned his face away gently, not to make eye contact with other people. I don't really want to talk about it. He waved his hand and said. Okay, you don't need to explain so much, I understand. I am too lazy to continue fighting with Uchiha Kiyoshi. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled with satisfaction, thanking Uchiha Madara for his contribution to the harmony of the company. Of course, these are just jokes, just daily quarrels, which are part of the company culture. When Uchiha Kiyoshi and Uchiha Madara were talking, the consciousness of Senshofei gradually became clear. Hearing Uchiha Madara's voice, he instinctively felt that something was wrong. As soon as he opened his eyes, he made a seal movement, always ready to perform the spell. What happened next confuses him a bit. Senjujuma, Uzumaki Mito, and Uchiha Madara sat at the same table, and there were several dishes of delicate cold dishes on the table. The scene looked peaceful and harmonious, just like when Konoha was founded, they could still have a drink and talk together. Brother, sister-in-law, opponent. Kian Shofagian subconsciously checked whether his chakra flow was still normal. Before Uchiha Kiyoshi opened his mouth, Senju Bashirama took the initiative to walk up and took over the job of explaining. He smiled and put his arm on Kian Shofagian's shoulder, very happy. Fagian, you are finally here. It feels familiar and real. It has been a long time since Kian Shofagian felt the big brother's generous arms, and I feel warm and comforted. But what does, "it's finally here," mean? 10 minutes later, Senju Bashima explained the current situation to Senju Tomonama, including the things they have to deal with now, but there are some details that only Uchiha knows clearly, so they didn't mention them. Kian Shofagian's face has always been very calm. No matter what unexpected things happen, his first reaction is to accept it, and then think about countermeasures. As for the change of mood, it is not so important anymore. He believes that a qualified leader should have ups and downs in his chest and be calm. It's just that in the eyes of others, he is an unsmiling and serious facial paralysis. Unlike Uchiha Madara's aloofness and arrogance, Senshu's expression changes less and more because of rational supremacy. Sensibility has a low priority. Kian Shofagian lowered his head slightly, concentrating on integrating all the information. Then, he nodded and sighed. The pure land of the underworld, the spirit of the god of death, is really unimaginable. Before I died, I fantasized about the future of Konoha, but I didn't expect to feel the breath here again. Sensho Fujian looked at the window. Although the window was closed tightly, he could imagine the scene outside through the description of Sensho Zujian. Konoha is like a rickety carriage moving forward. Sometimes it encounters a rolling stone falling from the mountain, and suffers a lot of impact, causing the wheels to be crooked. Odor. If you want this carriage to move forward steadily, you must not only withstand external shocks, but also eliminate internal hidden dangers by yourself. Sensho looked at Uchiha Kiyoshi from the door. So, Mr. Shinigami, you summoned me because of my student, Shimura Danzo. Kiyoshi Uchiha smiled and shook his head slightly. Not all. The restaurant is short of people. In order to ensure the good working conditions of the employees, it is still necessary to implement a shift change system, and the current few people cannot be allowed to work without rest. He's not a sweatshop either. Therefore, recruit more people and share the work. Hyansho opened his mouth to say something, but the contrast between the topics before and after was so great that he couldn't find a suitable entry point for a while. Sensho Bashima put the towel on his shoulders on Sensho Fima's shoulder, and said with a smile. Simply put, you're going to work part-time. Don't you always say you want to serve Konoha, so now is just right. Qian Shufan frowned, the service in his mind didn't seem to mean that. But in any case, let's accept the status quo. He shook his head, put aside those meaningless thoughts, and returned to Danzo's affairs. As I expected, Hiruzen's quality is enough to be Hokage. But in terms of ability, he can't grasp it openly and secretly like me. Therefore, he needs Danzo to share the responsibility for many things that cannot be put on the table. But decentralization of power is a very dangerous thing, not to mention the power directly distributed by Hokage. The inflated power will make people lose their normal judgment on themselves. Uchiha Kiyoshi nodded secretly. As expected of being a leader, every word he speaks is a big deal. He glanced at the table, which was just right for 4 people. Uncle Phagian, go sit there. Chapter 67. I said I didn't target Uchiha. Sensho stepped forward, saw Uchiha Madara, looked at each other, and slowed down involuntarily, with vigilance in his eyes. Even though Senju Hashima once shook hands with Uchiha Madara to make peace, Senju Tobima has never had a good relationship with Uchiha Madara. The feud between him and Uchiha Madara is not so easy to resolve. Uchiha Madara looked at the 1,000 hands and said coldly, "Do you want me to go away before you sit down?" Qian Shofei hesitated for a moment, thinking that the present is different from the past, and the problems to be faced after death and rebirth are already different, so there is no need to worry about the past. He quickened his pace and came to the table, and sat down with his legs bent. Uchiha Kiyoshi looked at these 4 capable people, who happened to make a table, and wondered whether to teach them how to play mahjong. In the standard shadow level game, except for him, those below the shadow level cannot play on the table. Hatake Sakumo sat on the 2nd floor and looked down. The second Hokage-sama also came. None of the records in the history textbook can put together such a good lineup on the same page. Although the 4 of them were sitting together in Kyanshujujian. However, due to the old enmity between Senju Phagian and Uchiha Madara, the atmosphere is obviously not very harmonious. Regarding Danzo, Uchiha Kiyoshi had already made up his mind, so there is no need to say more. Killing Danzo is only the first step in changing Uchiha's status. The foundation of the Uchiha family in Konoha was shaken, which started with the 9 Tails incident. The female Chiriki is the weakest when she is pregnant, and Kyuubi is most likely to break through the seal. Uchiha Obito took this opportunity to unlock the 9 Tails seal on Uzumaki Kushina, released 9 Tails, and controlled 9 Tails with Sharingan. Kyuubi, who was controlled by Sharingan, had pupils showing the Guyu pattern of Sharingan, which was seen by all Konoha residents who had experienced this incident at that time. The crime of Obito was carried by the Uchiha family. Even though the reason and the real culprit have not been found out, the Uchiha family has always been under suspicion and criticism. His position in Konoha plummeted, and even his place of residence was driven to the edge of the village. Now, Kiyoshi Uchiha wants to hear Senju Tomona's opinion on Uchiha. After all, Almost all of Konoha's top executives are left behind by him, and they are more or less influenced by him ideologically. Kiyoshi Uchiha said. Actually, it's not just about Danzo, the attitude of senior Konoha towards the Uchiha family. He stopped talking halfway, looked at the Kihonshuban, and asked. Uncle Togama, I want to know your opinion on Uchiha. Uchiha. Kihonsho raised his eyes while muttering, remembering things from a long time ago. Before explaining his attitude towards Uchiha, he must separate rational and emotional thoughts. First of all, I have to admit, as the second generation of Hokage, my personal attitude towards the entire Uchiha is negative. The Senju clan and the Uchiha clan have confronted each other for many years, and I have continued this feeling of struggle until now. Always beware of the Uchiha family. Uchiha Madara's eyes were sharp, and he squinted at Senshubanjian. The hand on the arm secretly exerted force, showing a faint killing intent. Kihonsho Feijian said in a slow tone. But it's just my personal emotion. Madara, maybe you think I've been targeting the Uchiha family. The eyes of Sensho Feijian met Uchiha Madara again. However, for a politician, emotions come after interests. In terms of maximizing interests, instead of defeating all potential enemies, it is better to develop more friends. The same is true for the Uchiha family. It is in Konoha's best interest to stabilize them. Uchiha Madara sneered and said. You say so, but what do your students do? Thousands of hands lowered their eyes and sighed softly. There were two things that made the development of things deviate. One was my death. I hadn't paved the way for the students when I was dying, and I didn't explain many things clearly, which caused many of their actions to be inconsistent with me. The second thing it is the untimely death of my student Uchiha Kagami. If he can live to the present and work with the monkeys, the Uchiha family will have a completely different right to speak. One of the intentions of mentioning Uchiha Mirror in Senshubei is also to tell Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Kiyoshi. If I don't like the Uchiha family at all, I won't let Uchiha people join the Naruto guards and become his students. Kiyoshi Uchiha said. Fortunately, the descendants of Uchiha Kagami have survived. The name is Uchiha Shisui, and he is also a very outstanding talent with extraordinary talent and the same quality and character as Kagami. He actually felt that, as Uchiha Mirror, even if he didn't die on the battlefield, he would continue to be targeted by Danzo. Kihonsho frowned, and said. That's right, it's a good thing. But when you say that, it seems like you know the mirror very well. I don't know much about it, but I just heard about it from Mito. Uchiha Madara did not respond to Senju Tobma's statement, he always only looked at the results. It's just that he felt confused for a long time. If he can guarantee the stable fate of the Uchiha family and revive his younger brother, does he still have the determination and motivation to continue to implement the Moon's Eye plan? Even if Kwana's resurrection can be done just by Uchiha Kiyoshi's thought, it sounds very casual. But as long as it can be resurrected, the process is nothing. But where should the planning and layout of the previous decades be placed? The final result is to revive Kwana and let the whole world fall into an illusory dream. Uchiha Madara then laughed self-deprecatingly. What about the Moon's Eye project? What about Ten Tails Jinchuriki? You still have to serve the dishes when you wake up tomorrow morning. Kiyoshi Uchiha said. Anyway, uncle, it's good that your attitude is like this. He turned and walked towards the shrine again. Kihonsho asked. Are you really going to kill Danzo? Uchiha Kiyoshi continued to walk forward and asked. Why can't I kill him? Is he important? The image of a big tree emerged in Kihonsho Feijian's mind, and Danzo corresponded to the roots under the soil. He did lose himself in the pursuit of power. But apart from his bad deeds, Danzo did contribute to Konoha as a root hidden in the dark. Uchiha Kiyoshi stopped, stepped heavily on the ground with his feet, and said bluntly. Take it as the old thing Danzo abdicated in the way of death. Could it be that Konoha can't turn around without Danzo? You, the second Hokage, are dead, and Konoha's son will rise as usual. Danzo, if he dies, someone will take his place. The double-edged sword of the root organization is not necessarily bad if it is placed in the hands of others. Hyansho Phaegian was stunned after hearing this, and cursed himself inwardly. As for his students, he still couldn't bear to see others kill him. He replied with a gloomy expression. That's right, what Danzo has done cannot be buried. These absurd things must have a resounding ending. It was not what he wanted for things to turn out this way. Uchiha Madara raised his eyebrows, thinking that his nominal junior was rarely in the same position as him. When they bickered before, it was Uchiha Kyoshi and Senju Zuma who came together to ridicule him. Uchiha Kyoshi realized that his words were a bit heavy, and his tone turned calm, and said with a smile. Uncle Phaegian, don't think too much, there are still many things to do in the future, there is no need to worry about Danzo. Chapter 68 Expanding the Barrier. Sensho Bashima put his hand on Sensho Phaegian's shoulder and said, Our resurrection is not expected. You may still have the way of thinking when you were Hokage, and you have to take care of everything. But in fact, we are just bystanders. There is no need to think as hard as before. As a newcomer, it was difficult to change the thinking mode of Hyansho Phaegian, but under the guidance of his brother, his mood gradually returned to calm. I know, as long as this kid named Kyoshi Uchiha chooses the right path, we should help him. And then witness the development of young people by the way. Enjoy the retirement life of eating tea and reading newspapers. Hyansho Zujian nodded slightly, and said in relief. Phaegian, you are still so smart, you can grasp the key points at once. He lightly patted the back of Thousand Hands, smiled gently and said. In order for you to get used to this place, go and wash the dishes in the kitchen. I resisted the urge to do the dishes and left them for you. Hyansho lifted his drooping head and cast a contemptuous look at his good brother. Should I say I'm touched? Uchiha Kyoshi came to the shrine, and the object of the summoning this time was the Jonin of the Hyuga branch named Hyuga Hiroki, who belonged to Onbi during his lifetime. After recruiting so many cage levels, suddenly recruiting a Jonin level, ordinary person, is an exception. The number of people is increasing. Fortunately, there are 2 floors above the restaurant, and the area of each floor is relatively large, which can accommodate many people. Uchiha Kyoshi decisively spent 1,000 wish power. Today's Wadao restaurant ushered in a second newcomer. Hinata Hiroki still maintained a painful expression on his face, his facial muscles were extremely uncoordinated, and he gritted his teeth, as if he had suffered a huge torture before he died. There is no forehead guard with Konoha, and no bangs to cover his forehead. Uchiha Ching saw the caged bird curse mark on his forehead at a glance. The curse seal of the bird in the cage is a unique symbol of separation. Although it will disappear with death, the resurrection of the Palace of Death system is to resurrect the physical state of the designated character at a certain point in time before his death, and cannot touch the state after death. After all, a corpse has no signs of life. Therefore, Hyuga Hiroki's caged bird curse seal is still preserved. With the cyan cross marks and 2 hooks in opposite directions, the Hyuga clan can destroy the brain tissue of the person who has been cursed according to their own consciousness. In other words, he has mastered the power of life and death. In fact, Kyoshi Uchiha also heard the saying that the curse seal of the bird in the cage will disappear after death. As for whether the news is true, there is no conclusion yet, and it should be a secret known to the Hyuga clan. Before Hinata Hiroki regained consciousness, Uchiha Kyoshi heard the system's active notification sound after a long absence. You have consumed 5,000 wish power, triggering the reward mechanism, Pure Land on Earth. The scope of the system enchantment is expanded to the entire Konoha village, with the Konoha defensive enchantment as the boundary. And give the authority to adjust the range of the enchantment by itself. The lower limit of the range is Wadao Restaurant, and the upper limit of the range is Muya Village. Finally come. Uchiha Kyoshi now wants to celebrate by kneeling while sipping champagne. The system didn't hang up, but chose to show up at the right time. I can finally open a branch in Konoha, and I don't have to worry about the employees having no place to live. The scope of the system enchantment has expanded to the entire Muya Village, which means that his employees finally don't have to stay in this small restaurant all day long. Able to move freely in Konoha and complete various daily tasks. he won't have to do things like grocery shopping by himself in the future. And fortunately, the system didn't bluntly expand the range of the enchantment to the entire Konoha and then lock it on. Instead, he was flexibly given the right to adjust. In this way, even if an employee with an ulterior motive sneaks out, Uchiha Kiyoshi can drive him back to the restaurant at any time. It's easier to manage. Uchiha Kiyoshi turned his attention back to Hinata Hiroki, who had just been summoned. The curse mark of the bird in the cage is too attractive, he curiously asked Mito Uzumaki. Mito, with your ability, is there a way to remove the curse mark of the caged bird? Uzumaki Mito shook his head. The surgical operation on the human body is not much different from performing surgery. The bird curse seal in the cage is directly connected to the brain tissue of the person who has been imprinted, as if a bomb has been planted in a person's brain, and the buried position is very deep. Of course I have a way to forcibly break the seal, but it will inevitably hurt their brains. In other words, there is a risk of becoming a vegetable. Even Uzumaki Mito is not 100% sure to remove the curse seal, which shows that it is indeed deeply rooted and difficult to remove. Kiyoshi Uchiha paid attention to the curse seal of the bird in the cage mainly because of Neji. When I think of Neji, I think of the words, "Ningji, you died so badly." Poor Neji was the only one among Konoha 12 little powers who died. Hinata Hiroki opened his eyes, and the draft directly blew on his forehead, making him shiver, feeling very uncomfortable. Usually, he is used to completely covering his forehead with a forehead protector, so as to avoid exposing his conspicuous and embarrassing imprint of the caged bird curse. Covering his forehead is a habit he has had since birth. The members of the Hyuga clan cover their foreheads, and outsiders will not deliberately distinguish between the main family and the branch family when they see it. They just see the white eyes and think that you belong to the Hyuga clan, and they pay more attention to it in their hearts. However, if the person who separated from the family reveals the curse mark of the bird in a cage, it is like exposing a famous brand that symbolizes rank. Some prejudices and opinions will be quietly planted in the hearts of the witnesses, and they will have a sense of distinction. He subconsciously covered his forehead with his hands, and lowered his head, trying not to be seen by others to see the cyan curse mark engraved on his forehead. Even though his father said to him, "You are already a Jonin, and you are still affiliated with Hokage-sama's Anbu. Even if you reveal the curse mark of the caged bird, no one dares to look down on you." But the fact doesn't seem to be the case. He tried to show his forehead and walked on the street as usual, but passers-by would always look at him more and whisper something behind his back. Uchiha Kiyoshi walked up to Hinata Hiroki and handed over a Konoha forehead protector. Although covering up cannot fundamentally solve the problem, it should make you feel better. Hiroki Hinata was stunned, looking at the boy who handed him the forehead guard in front of him. Suddenly, the memory cannot be connected smoothly. The memory before he appeared was that he was pierced through the body by the berserk Mudun, the blood flowed all over the place, his eyes were closed, and his consciousness gradually escaped into the darkness. The word, death, is firmly etched in my mind. Now he has a clear consciousness, stands on the ground in a healthy body, and the surrounding atmosphere is calm. The temperature in the air is not as cold as in the underground laboratory. This is a warmly decorated small restaurant, with the heat of the sun on the tables and chairs. Speaking of which, he hasn't had a good meal for a long time. Hyuga Hiroki hesitated for a moment, took the forehead protector from Uchiha Kiyoshi, tied it skillfully on his head, and let out a sigh of relief. Uchiha Kiyoshi gave a smirk, and moved away from Hinata Hiroki so that he could directly see the table in Senju Bashirama. Chapter 69. Thank you. Hyuga Hiroki said to Uchiha Kiyoshi. Even if he doesn't understand the current situation, but after experiencing the painful experience of being treated as an experimental subject, a little kindness from others can arouse hope in his heart. As long as he recalled the scene of getting up and lying on the operating table, his body covered with distorted spells and being manipulated by others, his heart was filled with disgust, his chest felt tight, and he was so sick that he wanted to vomit. Hyuga Hiroki looked in the direction where Uchiha Kiyoshi was standing just now, and found that there were other people in the restaurant. But it doesn't matter whether you look at it or not. As soon as he glanced over, he remembered two scenes. One is Hokage Rock, and the other is the statue of the Valley of the End. Senju Bashima put his arm on Senju Tomonama's shoulders, and talked about the new things that happened in the restaurant. Let me tell you, on a rainy day, beer and fried chicken go together better. You must try it as soon as possible. Kion Shofagian said curiously. What do you eat when it's sunny? Still beer and fried chicken. Hyuga Hiroki's whole body seemed to be struck by a strong lightning. The first generation of Hokage, the second generation of Hokage, Uchiha Madara, and Mrs. Hokage Uzumaki Mito, sitting at the same table, chatting and eating cold dishes. For such a shocked expression, Uchiha Kiyoshi is no stranger to it. It is part of the summoning process. Everyone is busy with their own business, so explain yourself. Kiyoshi Uchiha showed a friendly and peaceful smile to Hiroki Hinata. Don't be too surprised, those are my employees. Hiroki Hyuga turned his head stiffly, looked at Kiyoshi Uchiha, thinking that your words didn't calm the surprise. Instead, it made him more confused. Uchiha Kiyoshi led Hinata Hiroki to the table next to them in Senjubashima and sat down, starting from the beginning, and patiently told all the relevant things. It should be easy to understand. It's normal to be resurrected from the dead. Those seniors were all summoned in the same way. Hiroki Hyuga was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth for a long time. He murmured in his heart, "What's normal? Can these people be summed up by only the word, senior?" Uchiha Kiyomi Hinata Hiroki's confused look is like a student looking at dense blackboard writing in a high math class. Apparently it's hard to digest these things. This is normal. After all, his experience is far inferior to those old monsters on the next table. Uchiha Kiyoshi felt that he should be given some buffer time. Want to eat omuris? What? Hinata Hiroki was thinking about what Uchiha Kiyoshi said just now, those things that are more weird and unpredictable than ghost legends, and he didn't react for a while. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled and said, "We are a restaurant here, we can order food." Hyuga Hiroki was stunned for 2 seconds, then looked around. This is indeed an authentic restaurant with a smell of fireworks. He scratched his head embarrassedly and said, "But I have no money with me." Hyuga Hiroki was a little uncomfortable with the other party's kindness. "It's okay, just do me a favor. What are you busy with?" Hyuga Hiroki said very curiously, leaning forward a little. Uchiha Ching said every word, very clearly. "To your patriarch Hinata, tell a complete story of what you experienced in the underground laboratory." Hinata Hiroki's face became darker, memories rolled in his mind, and grief and anger were about to overflow from his heart. "It is good." He clasped his hands hard on the table, making a heavy and loud sound. Kiyoshi Uchiha said, "Do you like cilantro?" The heavy topic came to an end. Uchiha Kiyoshi asked Hinata Hiroki's taste. "There is no need to put coriander, please put more capers." After speaking, Hyuga Hiroki made a sound in his stomach. He was so hungry that his saliva drooled just looking at the small cold dishes on the next table. But with these ruthless people sitting at the next table, Hyuga Hiroki didn't even dare to look at them a few more times, let alone stretch out his chopsticks. "Yes, I also like to eat capers." Hinata Hiroki finished the most satisfying omuris in his life, and collapsed on the chair. After the scope of the enchantment is expanded, the characters who have been resurrected from the pure land of the underworld can also walk out of the Wadao restaurant. In the evening, Kiyoshi Uchiha and Hiroki Hyuga came to the clan of the Hyuga family together. Due to the fact that it was during the war, some guards were set up around the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Hiroki said to Uchiha Kiyoshi, "Let's go around and go in the other direction." Uchiha Kiyoshi said curiously, "Why do you want to go around? Seeing your white eyes, the guards will let us pass." Hinata Hiroki smiled. "The other side is governed by my father." Uchiha Kiyoshi imagined it, probably a tearful reunion scene. When the old father saw his son who had come back from the dead, he choked up and embraced, his silver hair trembling in the wind. Tears fall on the wrinkles, like morning dew wets the annual rings. Although the scene will be very touching, but with his identity, this kind of thing will happen many times, and he can't bear to watch such emotional scenes frequently, so he said. Let me watch from a distance. After you explain, let's go find Hinata together. Under the leadership of Hyuga Hiroki, Uchiha Kyo went around to another entrance of the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Hiroki ran over impatiently. Uchiha Kiyoshi looked from a distance. The white hair was hugging the black hair, and the hands with stiff joints were extremely powerful only when they hugged his son's back tightly. I thought to myself that it might not be easy for a separated father to train his children to become jonin. The scene of father and son embracing lasted for a while. Kiyoshi Uchiha stood for about a quarter of an hour before seeing Hiroki Hinata running back, wiping away tears while running. My dad took us to find the patriarch. Under the leadership of Hyuga Hiroki's father, Uchiha Kiyoshi came to the door of Hyuga Hazuru's house, and then passed through several doors. In the deep courtyard, he saw the dignified Hyuga Hazuki wearing long clothes. Seeing Hiroki Hyuga Hyuzu was overjoyed and surprised. He was kneeling on the mat, but stood up directly. Hyuga Hiroki is a jonin who accounts for a small proportion of the family, so he is naturally very impressed. Hiroki. Hinata said happily. You have been missing for more than a year, and the whole clan thought you were killed in battle. It turns out that you are still alive. After finishing speaking, he saw Uchiha Kiyoshi on the side, and it was even more difficult to imagine the connection. Hinata Hiroki shook his head with a wry smile. Patriarch, I didn't disappear because of something on the battlefield. Presumably my current name has been engraved on Konoha's monument. Suspicions abounded in Hyuga Hazuzu's heart, and he could already hear something was wrong just from this sentence. You came to me to explain this matter. Hyuga Hiroki said with a heavy face. I was seriously injured on the battlefield and met a group of people who claimed to be in the Anbu medical class. I was confused at the time, and I had no ability to move, let alone resist. When I woke up, I was already lying in Danzo's laboratory inside. Chapter 70. I'm just making a suggestion. Hinata was too shocked to speak. His face immediately became extremely serious. Is everything you say true? He could feel the curse mark of the bird in a cage on the opponent's head, and he was indeed a member of the Hyuga clan. At this time, Hyuga Hiroki's father, a veteran he trusted, also stood by his side to testify. Ever since the caged bird curse seal was widely used, the Fen family had hardly lied in front of the Zong family. Things are almost settled. It's just the middle process, he can't figure it out no matter what. Hinata Hijuru noticed Kiyoshi Uchiha again. This man obviously has the ability to easily complete S-level tasks but chooses to run a restaurant. The image of Kiyoshi Uchiha gradually became mysterious due to rumors, and Hinata Hideshi subconsciously felt that his arrival also proved that this matter was extraordinary. Hinata Hiroki said firmly. It's absolutely true. Danzo took me as an experimental subject, and asked his experimenters to implant the cells of Senjujuma from the first Hokage-sama into my body. Hinata Hideto suddenly fell into meditation. As the patriarch of the great clan, he also knows some cryptic information. In some small villages in a small country on the border of the Land of Fire, villagers often go missing. The original popular saying is that robbers are responsible. However, he recently obtained information from some side channels that these things will be related to Danzo and Orochimaru. At first he didn't care. Danzo and Orochimaru are both Konoha's very high-status people. One is the leader of the Root organization, and the other is one of the three ninjas. Under normal circumstances, it is best not to have anything to do with them. But at this time, his fellow clan was coveted and persecuted, and as the patriarch, he couldn't sit idly by. Anger accumulated in his heart, and Hinata Hidetsu's face became more and more serious. Shing, why did you come here with Hiroki? Hinata asked curiously. Hyuga Hiroki immediately explained to Uchiha Kiyoshi. I was saved by him. Without him, I might have died in the laboratory of Danzo and Orochimaru. Before coming, Uchiha Kiyoshi confessed to Hinata Hiroki not to reveal the resurrection. Leaking out this kind of thing will cause endless troubles. Hyuga Hijuru was awed at the moment, facing Uchiha Kiyoshi, bowed sincerely and said, "Thank you." Uchiha Kiyoshi found that although Hyuga Nichizu knew what happened and did not doubt their statement, he was still a little hesitant and did not show a firm attitude. These people in leadership positions are always used to making decisions before making decisions when facing urgent matters. They will think carefully for a while before making up their minds. Then he will come back to come up with ideas. Let's add fire. If the Hyuga family is afraid of getting ahead, they can call more people. Chief Hiroki, the purpose of my coming to you is not just for Hiroki alone. As the saying goes, when you find a cockroach in the room, it means there are already a bunch of cockroaches in the room. The matter of Hiroki is just the tip of the iceberg. More importantly, whether the clansmen of other families, or even the helpless civilians, have also been persecuted by Orochimaru and Danzo. In other words, there are many people who share the same hatred as us, and a group of people raised their arms and shouted, and the momentum is still great. Quote, although it was a suggestion, Uchiha Kiyoshi did not speak too bluntly. He was an outsider to Hyuga Nichizu. He has the Uchiha prefix in his name, which can lead to extra suspicion if said too explicitly. Speaking of 7 points, the rest will be left to Hinata Hijuru to make up for himself. After listening to Hinata, the whole person was shocked. It is not very important whether the names of other families are recorded on the experimental list of Orochimaru and Danzo, the key is people's suspicion. At this time, the Third Ninja World War is coming to an end, and the time for the memorial service for the martyrs will be set soon. Unlike the passion at the beginning of the war, the mood of the whole village began to cool down rapidly, falling into the pain caused by the war, and Konoha's cemetery exuded sadness. The dead are the most important. No one wants their children or brothers and sisters to die miserably on the operating table or in the liquid tank as a little white mouse. People cannot accept such a reversal. What's more, Danzo is a person with a criminal record. Before that, he and Orochimaru had been exposed to human experimentation, which caused quite a stir, and was ordered to stop by Sarutobi Hiruzen. But the follow-up is just from the bright side to the underground. Hinata Hidatsu nodded and thanked again. Good advice. Ching, thank you for your help to the Hinata family, and Nichizu will definitely keep it in mind. I'm a soft-spoken person. It's good to get your attention. Afterwards, Hyuga Hijuru began to think about who to talk to next. And when it was getting dark, all the elders of the Hyuga family were called together to hold an impromptu meeting. Uchiha Kiyoshi left at this point. Next, the person who took the lead in questioning Danzo was the prestigious Hyuga patriarch Hyuga Hijuru. On the surface, it has nothing to do with him. He just showed up at the right time, offered sound advice, and then receded into the background. Uchiha Kiyoshi walked back to the restaurant under the night sky, and brought a piece of Ichiraku ramen to each of his employees as a supper. Next, just wait for things to ferment naturally. In the evening 3 days later, in Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen processed the last document of the day, put it in a drawer, and rubbed his sore eyes. After half a month of continuous high-intensity work, I finally arranged the original complicated affairs. The war is also coming to an end. After the death of the third generation of Raikage, Yunyin's desire to attack became weaker and weaker, and he had almost withdrawn all his troops by now. Without the participation of the Kingdom of Thunder, Yan Yin does not want to fight against Konoha alone. Out of consideration for the strategic layout, he also intends to stop and make plans. Cheyenne national strength is weak, and it cannot withstand long-term consumption, so it has long been unwilling to fight. The land of Wuyin is far away from the other major powers, and it is intended to act as a spoiler for profit. If the battle becomes cold, they will withdraw their troops soon. Hirozuru Sarutobi leaned back on the chair, feeling the peace of nothingness for a long time. After a period of time, he will unload the position of Hokage and hand it over to Minato Namikaze, and he will be able to retire. Finally, I have enough time to close my eyes and rest my mind, practice calligraphy in my spare time, and often warn my son Asma not to smoke. But he is also a smoker himself, so it is not convincing to say that this is true. Hirozuru Sarutobi breathed a sigh of relief with a smile, and suddenly remembered the scene of meeting Senjujuma that day on the second floor of the Hinata restaurant. He closed his eyes, trying to take a nap. Boom, boom, boom. The rapid knock on the door woke Sarutobi Hiruzen from his light sleep, breaking his rare leisure. Come in. Hirozuru Sarutobi frowned. The knock on the door was so urgent that the door was almost knocked through. It didn't seem like a good thing. Secretary Sugihara pushed open the door and walked in anxiously. Master Hokage, there are many patriarchs outside the door asking to see you. Chapter 71. Hirozuru Sarutobi was shocked. Usually a patriarch came to him to talk about things as enough trouble. Now many patriarchs come together. I am afraid they will come to demolish his office. But no matter what, they can only be allowed to come in first. Sugihara opened the door. Patriarchs, please come in. Hirozuru Sarutobi originally wanted the secretary to give each patriarch a chair to sit down. But as more and more people came in, he gave up on the idea. I'm afraid it's not easy to arrange so many chairs. Hinata led the way, followed by Yumi Shiwei, Nara Shikahisa, and Yamanaka Kai. Hirozuru Sarutobi glanced at them, and there were more than 10 patriarchs of big and small families. Although some families are mediocre in strength, not well known, and have a small population, they still use their surnames as the name of the family. But after all, he is a member of Konoha. No matter how small the seats are, he can sit and participate in the meeting, which cannot be ignored. Many of them are afraid of Danzo's powerful methods, but the lives of the clansmen are involved, so the matter is serious, and they have to bite the bullet and appeal. Hyuga Hyuzu contacted many people before this, but considering taking care of Hokage's face, he didn't call them all, but only a small part. Although he didn't know the exact reason, Hirozuru Sarutobi already wanted to take off the Hokage hat and put it in the ashes instead. For a while he was asking himself, does Konoha have so many families? But fortunately, the Uchiha family didn't come, otherwise things would be even more troublesome. Sarutobi Hizen said solemnly, I'm afraid it's not a trivial matter for the patriarchs to mobilize so many people to come to me. Hinata bowed respectfully to Sarutobi Hiruzen first. Master Hokage, our patriarchs are here not to disturb you. We just want to consult one thing. Hirozuru Sarutobi stood up, left the chair, and said curiously, what's up? The patriarchs exchanged glances, and finally decided to let Hyuga Hiroki speak, because the source of evidence is Hyuga Hiroki of the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Hazuki continued, may I ask Hokage-sama, where is Danzo now? Has the human experiment he and Dashimaru cooperated with him many years ago not terminated, but has been carried out in secret? When it comes to Danzo, it is difficult for Sarutobi Hiruzen to give an accurate answer immediately. He is Konoha's Hokage, but he can't control Danzo. He knew very little about Danzo's secret plans. Hirozuru Sarutobi was stunned for 2 seconds. In order to avoid embarrassment, he immediately changed the subject and said, are all of you here because of Danzo? Hinata Hyuzu nodded, and then walked towards the corner of the room, and the patriarchs also moved their positions, leaving a passage for the door. Hiroki Hyuga came to Hirozuru Sarutobi and bowed. Hokage-sama, my subordinate Hinata Hiroki is reporting to you. With just a pair of white eyes and his name, Hirozuru Sarutobi immediately remembered that this was his subordinate who disappeared on the battlefield a year ago. The disappearance of Jonin was not a trivial matter, but at the time there was no way to find out the result, and it was only tentatively determined that he was captured by the enemy country. Sarutobi Hiruzen never expected that Hinata Hiroki would stand in front of him again, and in this form. Afterwards, Hiroki Hyuga clearly described his experience from beginning to end word by word. In order to restore the true appearance and convince people, he tried his best to go deep into the corners of his memory, trying to describe all the details that could be used as evidence. The story was told to Hiruzen Sarutobi of the third Hokage, and also to everyone present. I had just finished fighting with the puppet masters of Sha Yin, and my physical condition had reached its limit, so I walked towards the village stronghold in a daze. I don't know how long I walked, but a group of masked ninjas appeared in my sight. I thought they were Anbu's partners, so I was not vigilant. In retrospect, there was a slight difference between the texture and the dark part of the mask, and the pattern was more ferocious, and it was root tissue. Quote. Hirozuru Sarutobi leaned against the table, and with a force of his hand, he forcibly tore off a leg of the table. Uchiha Kiyoshi picked up the storage scroll and summoned the two Danzo subordinates that had been put in before. Leaving the different dimension of the scroll, Takuya Yoshi and Jun Hasagawa had itchy chests, coughed a few times in a hurry, and then looked at Kiyoshi Uchiha in confusion and fear, not daring to say anything. The two curled up together, their faces were pale, their spirits were listless, and they obediently lowered their heads and waited for the hair to fall. Uchiha Kiyoshi squatted down, put his hand on Yoshi Takuya's shoulder and said, continuing the topic from a few days ago, tell me, how can I meet Danzo? Yoshi Takuya looked at Uchiha Kiyoshi, his mouth murmured, his eyes were blurred, and he couldn't utter a word for a long time. Life in a different space is not easy, although Kiyoshi Uchiha will release them to eat every once in a while these days, so as not to starve to death. But the spirit has been devastated to the extreme. Danzo's two subordinates couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. Uchiha Madara couldn't wait any longer, and hurriedly stood up from the chair, gently pushed Uchiha Kiyoshi away with his hands, and stood in front of Danzo's two men. Uchiha Madara looked serious, and said simply and neatly, the torturers don't need to be so troublesome. Restore my pupil power. Just use Sharingan to solve the problem. Uchiha was stunned for a moment. It seems that Uchiha Madara has long been impatient with the stalemate for so long. He then laughed and said, okay, you are the ancestor, you have the final say. With Uchiha Kiyoshi's thoughts, Uchiha Madara's pupil power fully recovered, the pupils turned into Sangoyu, and then turned into Wanwa pupils. Without anger and majesty, the aura exuded seemed to make the air even heavier. He reached out and grabbed Yoshi Takuya's hair, lifted him up, and stared straight at him. Uchiha Madara's kaleidoscope pattern was reflected in Yoshi Takuya's pupils. The moment they looked at each other, his whole body twitched violently, and then he showed a sluggish expression like a puppet, as if his soul had come out of his body. Yoshi Takuya's mouth slowly opened, making a hoarse voice that was machine-like, numb and unwavering. Walk to West Street, go to the Zhaojian tailor shop, on the corner of the street, and tell the boss, I want to order a set of clothes without openings after entering the door, and then the boss will tell you, meeting is the beginning of parting. You answer, follow me like a shadow, after which the boss will close the door and take you to see Danzo. Uchiha Madara said in a deep voice. Aren't there any other steps? Nothing. After Yoshi Takuya answered, Uchiha Madara withdrew the illusion, and he rolled his eyes, fell to the ground like a soft cloth, and fell into a deep coma. Uchiha Madara turned his head to look at Uchiha Kiyoshi. Did you hear clearly? If you haven't memorized the steps and passwords, I can pull another person up and ask again. He squinted at Jun Hasagawa, who was still unconscious. Jun Hasagawa was caught by the cold light in Uchiha Madara's eyes, and couldn't help sitting on the ground shivering. Uchiha Ching scratched his head. Uchiha Madara's method was indeed much more efficient than his dry questioning. It's still not necessary, I have already remembered. After he finished speaking, Jun Hasagawa breathed a sigh of relief as if he had transitioned from the edge of hell to heaven. Uchiha Kiyoshi glanced at the two lifeless people like salted fish on the ground, thinking it would be more pleasing to the eye to let them stay in the scroll. Finally, Danzong is almost ridden to death, and I can continue to work. Chapter 72 The Roots of Konoha. Uchiha Kiyoshi murmured. I just saw Hyuga Hijuru and the others walk into the Hokage building outside, and I should have chatted with Sarutobi Hiruzen by now. And we have also found a way to meet Danzo. He looked at Uchiha Madara. Unexpectedly, Uchiha Madara is usually indifferent and silent, and looks like he has nothing to do with himself. But in fact, I am still very concerned about this matter. This is the second time he has taken the initiative to come forward. Kiyoshi Uchiha said. When are you going to see Danzo? Why don't you come and set a time? Uchiha Madara said lightly. Why should I decide? Aren't you used to making decisions by yourself? Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled and said. Respect the old and love the young. Uchiha Madara also developed immunity to Uchiha Kiyoshi's naughtiness over time, but he gave him a helpless glance and didn't bother to talk to him. After a while, Uchiha Madara said, "Since I can walk out of this door now, I don't mind taking this opportunity to stretch my muscles. If you want to go, just say it straight, and beat around the bush." However, in terms of Danzo's strength, it is still far from being able to make Uchiha Madara move his muscles and bones. Uchiha Kiyoshi thought about it. As for the code, let me do the trivial things like finding Danzo's location, and let Tobima use the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport you there. Okay. Uchiha Madara returned to the seat by the wall and closed his eyes to rest. Uchiha Kiyoshi thought about it for a second. He didn't know how Sarutobi Hiruzen was talking now. It is also unclear what measures he will take to quickly appease the emotions of the patriarchs after learning about the human experiment. If you are more aggressive, you may go directly to Danzo for trouble. And I have to go to find Danzong, so I just ran into it. If Danzo's personal freedom is restricted by Sarutobi Hiruzen, it would be inconvenient to do it himself. The only thing that is certain is that the current impression of Danzo has already nailed the pillar of shame in Sarutobi Hiruzen's heart. Danzo can die. Therefore, to cut through the mess quickly, it is advisable to leave immediately. Uchiha Kiyoshi immediately asked Senju Tomona to set the Flying Thunder God spell on himself, and set off to go out. In Hokage's office, Hinata Hiroki's narration was coming to an end. Sarutobi Hiruzuru's face was ashen, and he felt that the matter had just begun. Failed experiments will die on the spot because they cannot withstand the power of Mu-Dun. Hinata Hiroki paused, thinking about what else to add. Sarutobi Hiruza felt that the content was enough. Facing the torch-like gazes of the patriarchs, Hiruzuru Sarutobi did not dare to look directly at them. Every year at the beginning of the school year and the graduation season, he spends half a day going to the ninja school to do some small activities with the children, watch them train, and play tricks with the enthusiastic children. Before leaving at the end, give a small class in the classroom, or give a short speech on the grass, talk about the history and establishment process of Konoha, and talk about the will of fire. Children who hear these contents for the first time will give him warm applause and sincere smiles. Danzo's actions can be used to confirm his passionate words, and it will appear that he is lying again and again. Believe in the will of fire, but was used by the village's senior management for human experiments. Hiruzuru Sarutobi closed his eyes and took a deep breath, took the Hokage hat off his head, and said in a low voice, "Well, I know exactly what's going on." The scene fell silent, and everyone silently watched Sarutobi Hiruzen's expression, looking forward to his response. Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes were tired and lacking in spirit, as if he had aged a lot all of a sudden. This matter involved two people he cared about very much. One was Shimura Danzo, a classmate and colleague who fought side by side with him and supported each other for many years. One is the outstanding student Orochimaru who he has watched grow up to be his own. Sarutobi Hiruzen walked slowly to Hinata Hiroki, put his hand on his shoulder lightly, and said softly, "You have suffered, go back and take a good rest. Anbu's allowance is reserved for you. It doesn't matter if you don't want to be a ninja in the future." Sarutobi Hiruzen could guess that Hyuga Hiroki's resurrection was related to Uchiha Kiyoshi. He is the only one who can complete such a perfect resurrection in the entire ninja world. Thinking that the first generation of Hokage Sensho Hashirama should have also learned about this, he felt double pressure, his back was hard to straighten, and he felt unbearably guilty. Hyuga Hiroki opened his eyes wide and said with concern, "Lord Hokage." Hiruzuru Sarutobi smiled self-deprecatingly, put on the Hokage hat again, stood up straight and faced the crowd, and said firmly, "This matter is indeed my serious fault. As Hokage, I feel deeply responsible for such a heartless thing that happened in Konoha village and realized it later. But, please rest assured, I will guarantee it in the name of Hokage, will definitely give you a satisfactory answer." Quote. Hinata Hyuzu and the others looked at each other. Although they gathered to put pressure on purpose, it would not be appropriate to put too much pressure on them. The one standing in front of them was Hokage after all. If you make it embarrassing, it will affect the future. Sarutobi Hiruzen was able to make a guarantee, and the purpose of their trip was achieved. Hinata replied. Hope-sama Hokage understands, then I will take my leave first. Hiruzuru Sarutobi nodded and said softly. Don't worry. After everyone left Hokage's office, Hiruzuru Sarutobi's secretary Sugihara came in and said respectfully. Master Hokage, what are your orders? Hiruzuru Sarutobi took off his Hokage cloak and Hokage hat, and said coldly. You have been following Danzogen's strongholds, right? He didn't report some places to me. Sugihara replied. The subordinates know the location of Danzo. Okay, call all the people in Anbu who are not performing the mission, and go out with me. According to Yoshi Takuya, Uchiha Kiyoshi came to Konoha West Street and found Hayami Tailor's shop, in a remote location on the corner of the street. The location is remote, the facade is small, and the signboard is not conspicuous. It seems that the business is mediocre, and it is obvious that it does not want too many people to care. Uchiha Kiyoshi used the transformation technique to disguise himself as Yoshi Takuya, stepped over the threshold, and walked in. The bald, middle-aged boss wearing small glasses was leaning over his desk to sort out the accounts. He raised his head when he heard footsteps, narrowed his eyes and said, What do you need? Uchiha said calmly. Boss, please order a set of clothes without openings. If he didn't know that this was a secret code, Kiyoshi Uchiha would have found it strange to say it out of nowhere, which was very embarrassing. Probably because it sounds unreasonable, it can be used as a password. There was no one else in the store, and the boss continued with his usual expression. Meeting is the beginning of parting. Uchiha Ching replied. Follows like a shadow. After finishing speaking, the boss stood up, put the accounts into the drawer, closed the door skillfully, and locked it. With his back to Kiyoshi Uchiha, he walked inside. Come with me. Danzo-sama has been waiting for you for a long time. Chapter 73 Your death is the beginning. Danzo has been waiting for me for a long time. Very consciously, Uchiha Kiyoshi followed the tailor shop owner to the depths calmly. An underground passage is connected to the backyard of the tailor shop, leading directly to Danzo's stronghold. The road was a bit long, and the vision was flickering. The person who led the way didn't say a word to him. Kiyoshi Uchiha could only hear the sound of footsteps. Fortunately, the steps to meet were not too cumbersome, and Uchiha Kiyoshi did not have to wait too long. The guide brought Kiyoshi Uchiha into a spacious room. Although there are a lot of lights, it is enough to see everyone's face or mask clearly, but because the room is opaque and no external light comes in, it does not give people a sense of openness. The surrounding candles flickered frequently, causing the shadows on the wall to twist discordantly, adding a bit of gloom to the room. As soon as Kiyoshi Uchiha walked in, Danzo looked straight at him. Why did you delay the return until now? Did something happen in the middle? Danzo asked a cold question. Uchiha Kiyoshi replied calmly. Recently, Kuritaker's troops have shown signs of retreating, and some strongholds are no longer stationed, so I took that man named Uchiha Hideaki around for a while. Danzo frowned, turned his eyes left and right, and continued. It's okay, you haven't forgotten what I want. Of course not. Uchiha Kiyoshi took out a small liquid jar from his arms, and 2 round eyeballs were soaked in the liquid medicine. This looks like something that is used to store Sharingan, but it was disguised by applying the transformation technique on the glass. Danzo's squinted eyes were fully opened, and he leaned forward slightly, watching Uchiha Kiyoshi step by step with the liquid tank in his hands. Get closer and closer. Gradually, Uchiha Kiyoshi was only a few meters away from Danzo. At this time, as long as you use the instant body technique, you can go around behind Danzo and control his actions. Then apply the Flying Thunder God spell, and it will be difficult for Danzo to fly even with wings. Kiyoshi Uchiha lowered his head and turned on the Sage mode. He suddenly slowed down and sensed that there was another person behind Danzo. Uchiha Kiyoshi raised his head abruptly, and Danzo was sneering at him. You are too overbearing. So many docking steps have not been completed. Yoshi Takuya's partner Hasegawa-jun has not come with you, who do you think you can fool? Uchiha Ching smiled lightly and said, I didn't think highly of you at first, it's fine to meet you. The light shone on Uchiha Kiyoshi's face, and Danzo saw the fairy texture on Uchiha Kiyoshi's face, and said in surprise, You are Kiyoshi Uchiha. Uchiha Kiyoshi did not answer, just about to activate the instant body art, but found that his body froze in place. Looking down, the shadows covered the entire ground. Behind Danzo hides a Nara tribe who can use shadow imitation. When he was advancing just now, this person controlled the shadow to follow him step by step. When it was time to reveal his identity, the shadow on the ground was connected with his shadow. Danzo stood up, revealing a handful of kunai in his sleeve, pinched it in the palm of his hand, walked towards Kiyoshi Uchiha, and said disdainfully, I should have thought it was you, so you're trying so hard to come here to die alone. And you also got your own pair of Sharingan. According to previous performance, Danzo mistakenly believed that Uchiha Madara's pupil power displayed on Uchiha Kiyoshi was his own Sharingan. Uchiha Kiyoshi's face was calm, and he said lightly, Who said I was alone? Danzo suddenly raised his eyes and looked around, but there was no movement around him. He calmed down, feeling that Kiyoshi Uchiha was stalling for time. Bluff. Danzo's face became ruthless, and he raised kunai and stabbed at Kiyoshi Uchiha. Danzo, I'm very disappointed in you. Kion Shofagian grabbed Danzo's arm, and lightly took the kunai from his hand. The spatial transfer of the Flying Thunder God art only took an instant, and the movement of Senshubei was extremely fast, and Danzo didn't react at all. Kionsho looked at Danzo coldly, and said sarcastically, You haven't learned much about my philosophy, but you have a thorough understanding of those insidious methods. Danzo's arm was pinched and hurt, and he watched the scene in front of him in horror. In addition to Kai Namikaze Minato, the long-lost Flying Thunder God art, the long-lost Thousand Hands Gate. Teacher. Danzo's voice trembled and let out a low cry. The memory went back to the scene decades ago when Sensho Tobajian made a test at a critical juncture to select Hokage's successor. He was over 100 years old, and he suddenly showed embarrassment and panic that did not match his age. Sensho used his arm hard to break Danzo's arm, lifted kunai and swiped towards his neck. Since it's a shadow clone, don't put on such an unlucky expression. A puff of smoke appeared in front of Uchiha Kiyoshi. I had so many conversations with him before, and I was still showing off my power, but it turned out to be just a shadow clone. It's normal to think about it. Now that he has seen his identity, there is no need to use his real body to take risks. He froze for a moment, and said, Shadow clone. Where is that really? Kion Shofanjian activated his body instantly, and killed Danzong's subordinates in the room cleanly, and then calmly said, Danzo has learned a lot of tricks from me, such as using shadow clones as bait to negotiate. Danzo's real body, you have already seen it when you entered the tailor shop gate, and it is the guide. Uchiha Kiyoshi suddenly realized, looked around, and among the minions knocked down by Senshubin, there was indeed no one who led the way just now. He felt that when dealing with these old foxes, he probably had to be more thoughtful than a sieve. Fortunately, the fox on his side is more old. Uchiha Kiyoshi smiled and said, Why didn't you tell me earlier? Kion Shofagian replied, I thought you could tell. Uchiha Kiyoshi. The scene fell into a deathly silence. The real body of Danzo should be in charge of Madara. Uchiha Kiyoshi said. Originally, according to the original plan, he was only responsible for bringing the Flying Thunder God spell here, not directly killing Danzo. Kion Shofagian replied, You guessed it right. When Danzo wanted to run away, I sent Madara over to chase him. The two of them are now in another room. Uchiha Kiyoshi and Senju Tomona looked in the same direction at the same time. In the next room, Uchiha Kiyoshi felt the breath of two chakras, one strong and one weak. It couldn't be easier for Uchiha Madara to stop Danzo. Uchiha Kiyoshi said curiously. This small room probably won't be able to accommodate Madara's Susanoo. Kion Shofagian was also a little curious, and replied. Go over and have a look and you'll know. As soon as the two of them took a step forward, the overwhelming chakra momentum swept across the four directions like a stormy sea. The wall collapsed in an instant, and the sound of earth and rocks collapsing could be heard endlessly. Sensho Toikama simply put his hand on Uchiha Kiyoshi's shoulder, and led him directly to Uchiha Madara's side. Susanoo had already revealed his arms and ribs, and Uchiha Madara was surrounded by a chakra breath like the mist of the abyss. Uchiha Kiyoshi looked at the materialized blue chakra, and murmured, "Not at all, my Madara." Chapter 74. Two Bystanders. The eternal kaleidoscope pattern exudes a dangerous charm. Uchiha Madara's Susanoo has only just been opened, and it is far from the perfect body. Danzo opposite him was firmly held in place by the illusion of Sharingan. Even if you move even a little bit, you will suffer from the pain of thousands of needles scratching your heart. "Teacher, save me." Seeing the arrival of Kihonsho Feijian, Danzong endured the severe pain and uttered short sentences. Although restricted in action, he still retains the ability to open his mouth to beg for mercy. Uchiha Kiyoshi couldn't help feeling that Uchiha Madara had much more experience than him in torturing people. Facing his former students, Qiansho Feijian is always a person who can be ruthless even though he feels lonely. So many ninjas in Konoha died on the battlefield, so what about a mere Danzo? And many people died innocently because of Danzo's selfishness. Can't bear it just because of personal affair. Kihonsho Feijian clearly distinguishes between public and private. He shook his head slightly, unwilling to say more. Danzo gritted his teeth, suppressed the pain and roared, "Uchiha Madara, Konoha's traitor." Uchiha Kiyoshi added in his heart, "He's also a diligent guy in my restaurant." Kihonsho Feijian looked at Danzo with pitiful eyes, and reprimanded in a deep voice. 1 yard counts for 1 yard. Does it mean that if I clean up the door, you will die readily? Danzo gritted his teeth, but he had no words to refute. If he continued to talk, he would only talk about his human experiments. Uchiha Madara stared at the front, slowly said, "If the mouth can replace the fist to fight, then you still have some hope. However, I don't mind letting the ant writhe and struggle a few times before dying. After all, this is the only thing it can do now." Uchiha Kiyoshi suddenly felt that Uchiha Madara was very gentle when he quarreled with him. Seeing Sensho Himama and Uchiha Madara standing together, Danzo's incomprehension was no less than the degree of fear brought about by the scythe of the god of death on his neck. Danzo trembled all over his body, sweating profusely. Under the stimulation of illusion, the nerves responsible for pain sensation all over his body sent out signals one after another. He tried hard to open his mouth to make a sound, looking for life. As Uchiha Madara said, under the huge gap in strength, Danzo's only right to speak is given by him. Uchiha Madara showed a mocking smile, his eyes full of contempt. Illusion is not his usual means of attack. Compared with the mental impact of illusion, Uchiha Madara prefers melee combat that smells of blood, or a head-on confrontation with chakra-like mountains and tsunami. The hardy battle can keep him highly excited. It's a pity that Danzo was too inexperienced to fight, and was far from satisfying his desire for fighting, so he settled for the next best thing and used illusion. Make the whole process as long as possible, prolong the torture like a torture. If we really want to fight, the process of bickering with Uchiha Kiyoshi has not been so intense, it is all a disappointment. Uchiha Madara saw that Danzo wanted to say more, so he deliberately relaxed the intensity of the illusion. Danzo was still unable to move, but he could speak easily. Danzo was aware of this change and felt great humiliation. The old face wrapped in bandages was fierce and angry, twisted and wrinkled, and embarrassed like a completely wet dirty rag. Uchiha Madara allowed him to speak at this time, like kicking a bowl of dirty leftovers to a hungry beggar, and he had to accept it. Danzo tried his best to restrain his emotions, bypassing Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Kiyoshi, and looked at Sensho Fima. His teacher, this is his only hope. Teacher, why did you come together with traitors and outsiders to murder your own students? Danzo roared loudly. Kihonsho frowned. He had a lot to say in his heart, but not telling Danzo these cruel and explicit words was his only kindness as a teacher. The mistakes Danzo made and the things he did that violated human reason can certainly be convicted, but it is not the main purpose of Kyansho Feijian to come to help. Sensho Fima also wanted to get rid of Danzo. Because he doesn't want Konoha to have people that even Hokage can't control. In the early days of Hiruza Sarutobi's tenure as Hokage, due to personal ability problems, Danzo had to be given the power to establish a root organization to deal with the disgraceful things on the dark side. Assassination, deception, sowing discord. These methods, Danzo did learn a lot from him, and used them in cultivating and using root organizations, and shared certain responsibilities for Sarutobi Hiruzen. It's just that Danzo's hand is too long, so long that Hokage can't control him anymore. This is intolerable under a stable system. Konoha only needs one Hokage. Now you can do human experiments with Hokage on your back, and if Konoha suffers in the future, can you also stand still in order to preserve your strength, so as to ensure the value of your chips? As for Danzo's heart, whether Konoha is more important, or his own desire for power is more important, Sensho Feijian didn't bother to judge. The cruel truth is that Hiruzuru Sarutobi is about to retire, and Minato Namikaze, who is the most promising Hokage, is not on the same level as Danzo in terms of qualifications. When Sarutobi Hiruzen was in office, Danzo did one thing to his face and another behind his back. After Namikaze Minato took office, Danzo's small actions will only become more and more serious. Then, the root tissue cultivated by Danzo should be handed over to him. Facing Danzo's questioning, Senju Tomona sighed helplessly, and glanced at Uchiha Madara next to him. This person seemed to be watching their confrontation between master and apprentice with an appreciative attitude. Danzo, I don't want to say too much. Your desires are too inflated, and they have inflated to the point that they don't match your position. This has created your ending. In addition, on the issue of treating Uchiha, I hope you will think about it more. Right. That's all for now, I hope you understand. Of course, you also have the right not to understand, and the result is the same. Quote. The words of Sensho Feijian were clearly engraved in Danzo's mind, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, knowing that he had no room for rebounding. Teacher. Danzo whispered hoarsely. Can you think about it? I have been diligent and dedicated to Konoha for decades. Kyansho Feijian sighed again and shook his head. I can't save you. Telling you so much, I'm already thinking about old feelings. It's you standing on the edge of the cliff that didn't realize it, and you sped up the speed. On the one hand, he felt that Danzo had a damning reason. On the other hand, even if he felt compassion, the decision-making power was not in his hands, but in Uchiha Kiyoshi's. Danzo's face, which was still hysterical just now, gradually lost its ups and downs and returned to calmness. There is no Naruto, no supreme power, only the ending of death. Uchiha Madara twisted his neck, moved a little, and said in a casual tone. Feijian, let's finish the rambling. You didn't have such a boring time when you used the technique of Flying Thunder God to sneak attack. My neck was stiff from waiting. Kyansho snorted coldly. You also enjoyed listening to it. Uchiha Madara sneered. Of course, I'm Konoha's traitor, and I'm the happiest watching the infighting between your Konoha masters and apprentices. Sensho Feijian frowned and turned his head, remained silent, and didn't want to continue talking with Uchiha Madara, which would make him feel very bad. Uchiha Kiyoshi was calm on the surface, thinking that he actually had a good time listening to it. Chapter 75. Uchiha Madara put away his expression, put his eyes on Danzo, and said sharply. Is it true that anyone can covet the Sharingan of the Uchiha family? Huh, the younger generation is also incompetent, and I have to let me, an old thing who has come back from the dead, do it. Junior incompetent. Uchiha Kiyoshi coughed twice in embarrassment, and said. Madara, I am also your junior, and Danzo was also brought to you by me. Don't ignore me just to pretend. Uchiha Madara glanced at Uchiha Ching and said. Aren't you the god of death? And when did you act like my younger generation? This is true. Uchiha Madara did not continue to talk to Uchiha Kiyoshi, but focused on pupil power. Tobima, killing your apprentice with a Susanoo is not a bad thing to him. It can be said to be a gorgeous funeral that doesn't match his status. While Uchiha Madara was talking, the breath of Susanoo around his body became thicker and more stable. The meridians and flesh and blood stretch out, wrapping the bones, and the chakra quickly condenses into the shape of the coat. The volume of Susanoo gradually expanded, and it was about to pierce the roof. Like a crouching giant standing up gradually, every small movement brings a huge noise, causing the environment to tremble. Facing Uchiha Madara's chatter, Sensho Fima finally couldn't help but replied. It's nothing more than killing people. If you just cut his throat with the grass, what's the difference? Uchiha Madara chuckled lightly. So you are really boring, and you don't know how to appreciate it at all. Uchiha Chingching understands that Uchiha Madara will speak a few words whenever he has the opportunity. The small room couldn't accommodate Susanoo, who was gradually rising. The ceiling was directly pierced, and earth, stone fragments and dust fell profusely. As soon as Susanoo raised his hand, it was equivalent to directly lifting the ceiling. The afterglow of the setting sun fell on Susanoo's body, and the red glow and the blue chakra entity complemented each other, as if painting red on the armor. Uchiha Kiyoshi thought that the complete body of Susanoo would be about meters upwards, and with a wave of his hand, he could cut mountains and seas, and the movement caused by it could be clearly felt by the whole Konoha. But no matter how much Uchiha Madara wants to vent, he won't be so extravagant that he can use the full body of Susanoo to cut Danzo. Uchiha Kiyoshi didn't bother to remind him. Susanoo almost stopped changing, and Uchiha Madara just maintained it in the second form with a coat, and didn't even summon the Utengu armor. Uchiha Madara stared at Danzo together with Susanoo, who hung over him. Thinking that he had been looking at someone like Danzo for so long, Madara Uchiha couldn't help but sneered. Cells in Hashirama, Uchiha's Sharingan, you want to get them all. He folded his arms around his chest, Susanoo raised his hand, and the tens of meters long chakra entity Tadao fell straight down, and then stopped on top of Danzo. The violent and majestic wind pressure fell on the top of Danzo's head, and he was about to kneel down. Facing the landslide-like sense of oppression, Danzo suddenly felt a sense of sadness in his heart, and he roared unwillingly. Everything I do is for Konoha, I shouldn't end up like this. Kiansho Fan shook his head with a heavy heart, and murmured. If you really value Konoha more than yourself, why are you standing here? At this time, Uchiha Madara withdrew the illusion cast on Danzo. Well said. Can you still run? Uchiha Madara sneered. After finishing speaking, Susanoo suddenly pressed his hand down. Danzo raised his head in panic and looked up at the huge blade that fell from the sky above his head like a curse. The art of psychic. Danzo tried his best to complete the seal as quickly as possible, and pressed his hand to the ground. Ow! The deafening screams of beasts came from the huge smoke. Danzo summoned a huge dream-eating beast, the nightmare tapir, to block Susanoo's slash with its fleshy body. Uchiha Madara dismissed it, exerted a little force, and the nightmare's body was cut from top to bottom like a pile of thick paper. The nightmare's eyes were lost, and its mountain-like body fell to the ground. The Yulin Daohui was stained with a large amount of blood, and it fell heavily on the ground without any effort. Boom! The ground cracked, earth and rocks splashed, and Uchiha Kyoto felt the strong tremors from the ground. The nightmare fell to the ground, and its blood poured out, forming a large pool of blood. Danzo still couldn't escape Susanoo's blade, and the body was lying in the middle of the pool of blood, beyond recognition. Uchiha Madara did not remove Susanoo. Instead, he continued to slash the second knife heavily. Danzo's body suddenly disappeared from the pool of blood. He stood alive on the ground again, the bandage fell off, revealing a blind eye. Izanagi. Uchiha Kiyoshi murmured. This forbidden technique of the Uchiha family can convert unfavorable factors such as the death and injury of the caster into dreams, avoiding all attacks. The price is that the eye that uses Izanagi will permanently lose its light. Kiyoshi Uchiha couldn't help but recall that in the original plot, Danzo had ruined the entire arm of Sharingan, but he still couldn't beat Sasuke. I have never seen such a waste of Sharingan. Fortunately, Danzo hadn't transplanted Sharingan on his entire arm at this time, otherwise he would feel distressed when he saw it. Danzo had expected Susanoo's second swing of the sword. He closed his mouth and spit out a violent hurricane toward the ground, forming a swift thrust to push himself away, thus completing the long-distance rapid movement. Uchiha Madara raised an eyebrow. It's really struggling. With force under his feet, he rushed towards Danzo. Before Danzo landed, Uchiha Madara came to his whereabouts at an incredible speed. Raising his hand, he punched Danzo deep in the abdomen. Ho! Danzo was not on guard, as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer in the abdomen, blood spewed out of his mouth, and his eyes were about to burst out. Izanagi can also be used by you. Uchiha Madara pinched Danzo's neck and picked him up, unhappy. It's really boring. With force from the fingers, the bones shattered, as casually as if a tree branch was accidentally stepped on. Danzo had completely lost the chance to struggle, his eyes were closed, his breathing stopped, and he lost all vitality. His body hung naturally in midair, looking more stretched than his long clothes. Uchiha Madara tossed it casually, leaving Danzo's body aside, once again soaked in a pool of blood. Kion Shofagian squinted at the distance, with complicated emotions, and didn't think it was wrong, but because of his identity as a teacher, he couldn't bear it after all. Uchiha Kyoshi didn't have much ups and downs in his mood, and Danzo's death may be something to be happy about. But after coming here with Uchiha Madara and Senju Tomonama, there was no suspense about Danzo's death. He just witnessed all this as if he had finished the process. As he said to Senshubajian in Wadao restaurant before, Danzo's death is nothing. Danzo's body lay bleakly and twisted on the ground. 10 minutes ago, he was still able to play with people's hearts while at the same time fighting against the leader of the root organization who ordered him arrogantly and greedily want to possess everything. Danzo didn't realize what he had done until he died. His life is over, and it is not worthy of Uchiha Kyoshi's continued attention. Danzo is not important, but not having Danzo is important. Uchiha Kyoshi patted Senju Tobaikan on the shoulder. Please take Madara and leave. Another student of yours, Sarutobi Hiruzen, should be here soon.